My friend was attacked by their boyfriend after he was convinced that she was cheating on him. So I decided to get even by quite literally canceling all of his classes for college and screwing up his schedule in such a way that made it nearly impossible for him to sign up for any other classes in a timely manner. Here's how it went down. So back in the before times when the internet was still a new thing with lots of potential, I was enrolled in my junior college. A little bit into the semester, I moved in with my girlfriend so we could both save on rent. I'll call my girlfriend Lucy for the purposes of this post. One night, Lucy says she invited a friend from one of her classes for a game night, and this sounded good to me. We invited a couple of other friends, and it was really a fun night. Surprisingly, it turned out that her friend, who we will call Sarah, was someone I knew from high school. We weren't close friends, but we knew each other and we got along fine. After that night, Sarah was invited over pretty frequently for dinner, game nights, or to watch a movie. She even brought her boyfriend over a couple of times, who we will call Jay, but he never quite fit in. He would be quiet or standoffish and wouldn't really engage much, and just seemed like he never really wanted to be there. It was clear no one really felt comfortable having him there, but we invited him to be polite to Sarah. Fortunately, he only came over 2 or 3 times and found an excuse to refuse every other time. A month or 2 after this all started, Sarah called my girlfriend crying and asked if she could come over. And of course, we said yes. Now, the story that was relayed was that Jay was getting very upset with Sarah for coming over to our place so frequently, and then he accused her of cheating on him. She never clarified if he thought that she was cheating with him, Lucy, or both, but any option was ridiculous and never happened. But he confronted her and got verbally aggressive with her, calling her all kinds of nasty names. At one point, she tried to walk past him to leave and he shoved her back. This caused her to trip over a coffee table, fall over, and get a huge bruise on her butt and lower back. Now, Sarah swore up and down that he had never physically touched her before, and she believed that it was just an accident, but I was pissed off. I wanted revenge. You don't mess with my friends and you don't attack women. I wanted to beat the crap out of him, but while I am a very big guy, I've never been in a fight and I'm not a violent person. But instead, a revenge plan was formed in my mind. At the time, I was working in the administration building of the school as a student employee. As part of my job, I could access anyone's student records. I could see their fees and I could see their schedule. The date was fast approaching that was the last day possible to drop or add classes without penalty or specific permission. So I looked Jay up in the system, I got a student ID number and the other information that I needed, and I put my plan into motion. On the last day to change schedules, I used the dedicated enrollment phones in the administration building, and I canceled all of his classes. Not only that, but I went through and added every class I could find that had a course fee. If you owed a debt at the school, you couldn't get copies of your transcripts or anything else. Now, something that I didn't mention was that Jay was a foreign student and couldn't stay in the country if he wasn't enrolled with a certain number of units. Now, I wish I could give more info about the fallout, but as I didn't want to get this traced back to me, I didn't tell anyone, nor did I pull up his records again for quite a while. I did get a little payoff though, because Sarah was really worried about seeing him again. For reference, she had broken up with him the night after he pushed her, and they had an English class together on Tuesdays. Well, she said that on Tuesday he was there, but there was also someone new standing in the class, and he was standing because there weren't enough seats. Now, the teacher, seeing that there were more people than there should be, decided to call roll and just take a wild guess as to who wasn't on it. That's right, it was Jay. Apparently, after I dropped all of his classes, someone on the waitlist got in. Jay tried to argue with the teacher, but as the teacher had the official class roster and Jay wasn't on it, there was nothing he could do about it. Sarah said that she never saw Jay in that class ever again. But after that, I don't know much more about what happened next. Lucy and I eventually broke up, so I didn't see Sarah very often after that. After a while, I did look up Jay's class schedule, and all of the classes with course fees were gone, but he didn't have any other classes on the books either. I wanted to assume that he was kicked out of the school, but I didn't try to confirm it one way or the other. Either way, Sarah didn't have a class with him, and while he probably deserved more, he was definitely inconvenienced and possibly kicked out of the school. Sometimes I worry if I was way too harsh, but then I remember that he absolutely deserved it, because at the end of the day, you are more than welcome to mess with me, but when it comes to my friends, you better believe there's gonna be backlash. Holy crap, this is some serious revenge. You literally screwed this guy's schedule up so much that he probably got kicked out of the school, especially if they're an international student. Like, holy crap, that's crazy, bro. So truly, good for you for being so dedicated to your friends, because this guy absolutely deserved to get punished. And while the way you went about doing it is something I would personally never do, I do love the effort and I love the fact that you definitely got even. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My job was a chaotic mess all the way up until I decided to sort it out, resulting in me throwing away about $1,000 worth of candy that literally was getting in the way and something that we never sold. And instead of getting fired, fired, I ended up getting a raise, as they literally never knew that I threw away all this product. Here's how it went down. Okay, so back when I was in my early 20s, I worked at a grocery store that was owned by the chain Kroger. After working days for about 6 months, I was eventually moved to working the 11 to 7 or the 10 to 6 overnight shifts, and found that I really preferred them both for the clientele and for the different pace and not having to deal directly with the clueless general manager. One of the duties of the lone overnight checker was to restock all of the candy and snacks at the multiple checkout lanes. The candy was stored in the stairwell, giving the only access to the second floor office near the front of the store, which was an obvious fire hazard, by the way. Just picture this: 10 unopened cardboard boxes stacked along a not particularly wide stairwell, and you could imagine how messed up the whole thing was. Now, a lady who worked in the morning, who inventoried the candy remaining on the shelf, was a different person than the afternoon lady, whose job it was to occasionally, but almost never, inventory remaining candy in the stairwell. Then, daytime checkers were supposed to fill the lulls between customers by cleaning their check stations and by restocking candy by basically just grabbing whatever was handy at the bottom of the stairs, including opening up brand new packages to take out the individual sales packages inside to top up their aisles displays, meaning that over time, those 10 large cardboard boxes of candy each had a bunch of partial boxes and loose pieces inside of just random candy with no organization. Because I worked as the overnight checker, I was constantly getting notes attached to my time card from the general manager, who only had his job because he was golf buddies with the district manager and had never worked in a grocery store before 3 years before that, reminding me to sort out the mess by stocking the candy. One of the banes of my existence was the lady in the morning who was ordering a bunch of candy of cherry nibs. Apparently, it was part of a discount deal to buy a bunch of them, yet we barely sold any of them. There were unopened and partial boxes of them in every one of the larger boxes that held candy, as well as the crazy assortment of other candy. Finally, after about a dozen notes attached to my time card over the course of a month, I decided to act. One night, I pulled all the boxes down off the stairs and told the night manager that I was going to sort it all out for good, and he said that was totally fine. He was actually a cool guy who let me get work done and ran a very relaxed yet efficient shift. I then sorted all of the candy into chocolate, gum, suckers, basically by category, and all into about 6 labeled boxes. I then put all the stuff back in their proper boxes and then put all the rest of the candy in a cart along with the trash, as that was part of my job to take out from the registers at night. I then proceeded to throw away what I can only estimate was maybe $1,000 or more worth of candy, including about 90% of those stupid cherry nibs. I tossed them into the trash compactor in the back of the store with all of the trash on top of it so that the next person who would use it wouldn't notice a bunch of crushed candy and report me. Well, the next night when I clocked in, I was pleasantly surprised to find that instead of being fired, there was a note on my time card letting me know that I did a good job and that I would be getting a 25-cent an hour raise on my next paycheck, which really is hilarious considering the fact that they had no idea that I destroyed a lot of their product. Okay, I love the fact that the original poster did this because seriously, it sounds like they were not managing this well. The person ordering the food was picking out stuff that they probably liked, but no other customer did. So good for you for getting it sorted out, because this sounds incredibly obnoxious and I would hate to deal with that. My store maliciously complied with corporate after they didn't send us the proper items we needed so that we could sell Mother's Day products, resulting in one of the most awkward situations I've ever been in my life. Here's what went down. Okay, so years ago, I worked for a medium-sized retailer which sold all sorts of things, from confectionery to garden supplies, and the store had half an aisle near the front of the store dedicated to events, which were pretty much right in the customers' faces as they entered the store. Every few weeks, these event shelves would change over to a new department or be themed to any upcoming holidays or special days, such as Mother's Day or Halloween or stuff like that. Usually for these events, we would get the stock delivered the week before and spend that week taking out the old stock and replacing it with the new lines. If a new line was missing from the delivery, we would go and find a different line that would fit into that event from somewhere else in the store. One day in early April, we received an email from upper management. They said the following: "Do not replace missing event lines with any other lines." We emailed back to clarify because, of course, nearly every event delivery is missing at least one line. Do they want us to spread our other items out to fill the empty space or what? They said to us, just leave the space for any missing lines empty. Apparently, it will look like they have sold out. Barely a month later, while preparing for the Mother's Day event, we receive our regular delivery with no Mother's Day event lines. Not a single one. So we email upper management to let them know that we haven't received any of the event lines. They respond by saying that it will come in our next delivery and that we still should not fill any empty space. Well, needless to say, they did not arrive on the next delivery day either. We emailed them again informing them that we still had not received any event lines and heard nothing back. So we decided to do exactly what they asked. We cleared out the old event lines and left the entire event event section completely empty for the entire 3-week period leading up until Mother's Day. After Mother's Day, during a conference call, they asked us why we had 0 sales for the event lines and why our sales for the period had dropped significantly, but we just referred them back to the other previous emails where we told them that we never received the delivery, and they said not to fill the missing lines. And this is when the most deliciously sweet awkward silence began. After the call, one more email was sent out to everybody. Please use your best judgment when filling missing lines for events. And honestly, that was so satisfying because their policies to begin with were incredibly stupid. Yeah, that last line is literally them admitting that they're stupid and they don't know what they're doing. They didn't want to admit it because obviously they don't want to look like they did anything wrong, but it's also pretty obvious that they're the ones at fault. So good for you for putting them in their place because these people are complete morons. An entitled Karen freaks out on me after I refused to open up her burgers that she ordered just to see which one was which, as she had 2 different bags and didn't want to check it herself, resulting in one of the stupidest blow-ups I've ever seen in my life, as well as me literally being done with this job. Here's what happened. Okay, so I work at Burger King and today's Whopper Wednesday. And by the way, I'm typing this out while I'm on break. I'm handling drive-thru orders and things have been extremely busy today, and customers are coming and going without issue until a couple of minutes ago. This older woman, and who I'm assuming was her daughter or granddaughter, was in the drive-thru and had asked for her 2 combos in separate bags. And this is no issue. I separate the combos and I charge her order. After giving her change and holding the 2 bags in front of her, this woman then asked me which burger was which. I told her I didn't know, but that the cook had marked the wrappers for her to differentiate. She then tells me, very rudely by the way, that it's my responsibility to know which burgers were where, and to take the burgers out and open them to check. Now I'm dumbfounded with this request, and I tell her that I can't open the burgers because I have no gloves, and I had just handed her money. She then gets mad and tells me to just check the burgers already, but I repeated that I had no gloves and that she could check herself since my hands had just touched money. She then gets even more mad and demands a refund. So my manager comes in and the Karen berates me to her, saying how I didn't do what she had asked me to do, and how apparently I was the one with the attitude. But again, I had no gloves, and I had just touched money, and I refuse to touch food with no gloves, with what germs are on my hands. After getting her refund, my boss tells me next time to just do what the customer asked. And it's like, seriously, we were in the middle of a huge rush. I'm not going to the back where the gloves were at just to check this lady's order, because I have way more customers who actually want to be there for the right reasons, and I'm not going to hold everybody up all because of this stupid entitled Karen. Yeah, that kind of behavior is really disgusting. First of all, anyone who's ever dealt with money or worked in a bank knows how disgusting money is. I did work at a bank at one point in my life, and oh my gosh, it is really gross. Like, I wouldn't want to do anything else except for wash my hands at the end of the day. You're just handling and touching money, and money is so gross, dude. So in my opinion, I think the original poster did the right thing, especially when it comes to a customer's food, because who knows the kind of accusations this lady could have like thrown against you. And that, in my opinion, sounds like a bigger headache of her trying to be like, oh yeah, you poisoned my food, than just giving her a refund and getting her out the door. This next story comes from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. If you'd like to submit your own stories, check out the link in the description. Let's get started. Am I the jerk for starting my mini bike in my driveway, as well as taking it for a spin after my Karen neighbor blew up on me and physically attacked me? Because right now I'm wondering if I made a mistake or if I'm in the right. Here's how it went down. Okay, to start things out, I've been fixing up this mini bike for a while. It's just a basic pit bike and it needed a lot of work. I'm talking carb cleaning, rewiring the kill switch, adjusting the brakes, the chain lube, the works. It's been my little weekend project and honestly, something I'm really proud of. But last Saturday, I finally had it ready to go. The weather was nice, my tools were laid out, and my music was playing low on my Bluetooth speaker. I wheeled the mini bike out in the driveway, made sure everything was tight, and I gave the pull start a few solid yanks. And just like that, it came to life like a beast. It was loud, sure, but it was running perfectly, and I was super pumped. I let it idle for a minute while I checked the throttle response, made some adjustments, and then let out a satisfied breath. Well, that is until this entitled Karen enters the story. From across the street, I hear that high-pitched, furious tone that just radiates entitlement. Turn that thing off right now. I turn around and there she is, storming across her lawn in sandals and rage. She's got that classic bob haircut, sunglasses on even though it's cloudy outside, and she's waving her phone around like she's already mid-call with the cops. I try to de-escalate by saying, hey, I'm sorry, it's just for a minute, I've just got to get it running. She then snaps at me and says, this is a family neighborhood. You're disturbing my baby and my dog. You can't run that thing here. I then respond super calm, I'm not riding it. I'm just making sure it runs. I'll be done soon. But apparently that wasn't enough. She stomps into my driveway, gets in my face, and then starts yelling at me. You little punks think you could do whatever you want. I should call the police. This is illegal. And then out of nowhere, she shoves me in the chest. Like full on hand to chest. I stumble back stunned because honestly, who does that? I then held up my hands and I said, back off, don't touch me. But she steps up like she's about to do it again. So I give her one solid push, just enough to put some distance between us. Not violent, but instead just defensive. She then loses it and screams, you attacked me, you put your hands on me, and starts dialing her cell phone as if she's like reporting someone passing away. But then the hero moment steps in as my neighbor Mike across the street comes walking over. He says to the Karen, look, I saw the whole thing. He didn't touch you until you shoved him first, so you need to leave before this gets worse. Well, when he comes over, she looks like she just got caught stealing from a bake sale. Furious, red-faced, and flustered, she turns and storms off, still yelling about how she's calling the HOA, the police, and probably the FBI too. At this point, my adrenaline is pumping and I'm fired up. So what do? I look down at my idling mini bike, I throw my leg over it, twist the throttle, and I take off right off the driveway and around the block. I did a full loop at a casual pace. My helmet was on, my hoodie was flapping, and the engine was humming like a little chainsaw. I wasn't being reckless. I wasn't speeding or tearing up lawns. I was just sending a message. Neighbors looked out their windows and a few even smiled and waved. By the time I came back around, Karen was standing at the end of her driveway, arms crossed like she was expecting me to crash and beg for forgiveness. But you know what? I didn't say a word. I rolled right back into my driveway, I killed the engine, and I wheeled it over to the back of my 2002 Tahoe. I dropped the tailgate, I loaded it in, and I shut the door with the cleanest I win energy of my life. Later that day, her husband came over super apologetic. He said that she gets carried away sometimes, and asked if we could just let it go, and I told him, look, as long as she keeps her hands to herself, we are good. So on that note, I really need to know, am I the jerk for starting my mini bike in my driveway, and then riding it around the block after this Karen physically attacked me and tried to call the cops on me? Because at this point, I seriously have no regrets. Oh man, I can't believe this lady did that to you. First of all, it's really good that your neighbor across the street was watching over you, because you know for a fact that lady would have absolutely thrown you under the bus at the first opportunity. Because you know what? You had every right to defend yourself. This lady attacked you and pushed you. Like, who does that? That's not okay. You can't do that. So no, you're definitely not the jerk, because what you did, in my opinion, was incredibly funny. And this was the type of karma that this entitled Karen absolutely deserved. An entitled boomer mocked the fact that I was lactose intolerant and intentionally put milk in my coffee that I ordered, resulting in one of the most uncomfortable nights of my life. Here's how it went down. Okay, so I was at a restaurant with my family tonight in South Florida for my mom's birthday dinner. I ordered a mocha with oat milk, but the boomer server in his 60s barely spoke English and muttered to himself, "Stupid vegan," in Spanish when I tried to make my order. My dad, a native Spanish speaker, corrected him in Spanish and said that I'm lactose intolerant and that I'll get sick if I drink milk. Well, he just scoffed but said that he would put the order in. Immediately after dinner, I started getting a stomachache. By the time I got home, I had what can only be described as explosive diarrhea. And as I write this, I'm still suffering from extreme stomach cramps. Also, the restaurant advertises itself as an American restaurant. It's not Cuban or anything like that, and I just wanted to point that out. My dad ended up calling the restaurant in Spanish as no one there spoke English, and he got the server on the phone. He told my dad that vegan commies like myself are ruining Miami, and went on a weird tangent about how he escaped the Cuban Revolution, which really makes the whole not knowing English thing worse, given that if he escaped the revolution, he's been in America for over 50 years. Also, I'm not even vegan. My body literally just can't digest dairy. We ended up getting a manager on call that spoke English, and he said that he would talk to the boomer server. And there's honestly so many layers of issues here that it is completely crazy. That boomer should be in a nursing home, not working, and this restaurant shouldn't be hiring people that can't communicate with their customer base. It's truly one of the weirdest situations I've ever been in, and I honestly don't think I'm ever going back anytime soon. Okay, as someone who is lactose intolerant, this is really messed up. Because yeah, it can happen this violently and this fast if you're not careful. So the fact that this idiot was like, oh, you're just one of those stupid commies, one of these vegan people, you're ruining Miami. It's like, dude, what are you talking about? I just can't drink milk. Like, why would you do that to me? Because what this guy did is literally just unacceptable, and you should not have had to deal with that. Am I the jerk for demanding that my unemployed roommate pay me back for the rent I paid after she bought a brand new MacBook? Because right now, I'm not sure if I'm the jerk, and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. Okay, so my roommate and I have been living together for 2 years now. We split the rent 50-50, even though my room is slightly larger, but I cook more, so it evens out. She lost her job last month and asked if I could pay her share of the rent until she gets a new job. Well, I said yes since we are friends and times are really hard. Fast forward to yesterday, and I come home from work and I see her unpacking a brand new MacBook and some other clothing that she had bought. And for reference, this MacBook cost over $2,000. I asked her where she got the money to buy this when she didn't even have a job, and she became defensive and told me her parents sent her money for her birthday. I then informed her that if she can afford luxury products, she should repay me the rent that I paid immediately. She then claimed the money from her parents is a gift exclusively for those products and that I volunteered without any conditions. I reminded her that I am not rich either, and I missed a weekend getaway with my friends in order to pay her rent. She then began crying and told me that I'm being materialistic and that I just simply do not understand her problem. I then discovered this morning that I received half the rent money in an envelope with a message stating that she'd pay the other half when she can, but she won't speak to me much anymore. I don't feel like I'm being unfair in demanding my money when she's spending money on non-necessities, but maybe I did take it a little bit too far because it makes me wonder if I'm the jerk in this situation. No, I'd be pretty pissed off if I paid all the rent and then suddenly my roommate's like, oh, I got a brand new MacBook. Like, dude, no way. I'm sorry. That's not gonna be okay with me. So no, you're not the jerk because I think I would feel the exact same way if I was in your shoes. An entitled Karen claims that the entire park belongs to her, which according to her, gives her the right to let her dog run around and nearly bite me and my dog. Things got so bad that I ended up calling the police and reporting this lady for being absolutely insane. And now I really hope I never have to deal with her ever again. Here's what happened. So this happened to me earlier this morning. I just moved to a new city less than a month ago and have been checking out the parks where dogs are required to be on leash. Now I have an older dog that's a little terrier and he's been attacked in the past by larger dogs, so random dogs running up to him off leash really freaks him out. It also makes me a bit nervous because I was also attacked as a kid by a dog. I was bit in the face and I almost lost a cheek and I had to have reconstructive surgery. But by and large, I love animals, especially dogs, because 9 times out of 10, a dog's bad behavior is because of the owner, so I don't blame the dog. So at a new on-leash park this morning, things are going fine until my dog and I walk over a rise and further down the trail about 25 yards, where I see this lady who has 2 dogs who are both off their leash. The little wiener dog is going nowhere fast, but the German Shepherd sees me and my dog and immediately bolts for us barking. I picked up my terrier and I get him lifted over my head by the time the German Shepherd reaches us. I've learned over the last 5 years of having him that this is the easier way to keep him calm. Her dog is now right there. It's growling and trying to jump up and get at my dog. I loudly told the woman to call off her dog and she just stands there watching. Her dog makes another jumping lunge for mine, so I use my legs to push it away and I yell that she needs to call off her dog. Well, this apparently pisses her off because she just completely lost it on me. This woman starts screaming at me, calling me a jerk, and told me to get out of her park and to stop kicking her dog. Now, for the record, I'm not kicking the dog. I'm just using my legs to deflect her dog each time he tries to jump up at my dog that, by the way, I still have held over my head. I yelled at her again, call off your dog. If it bites, I will call the police. She called her dog off then, but it took a few attempts before it stopped. And at no point did this woman even move from where she was. She just stood there until her dog finally responded to her command and went back to her. As soon as she had him by the collar, she started cussing me out again, telling me to get out of her park. I then took off back to the parking area with my dog and I got him in the car. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, is it finally over? But no, this woman also comes into the parking area and starts loading her dogs into her car while continuing to scream at me how I've just completely ruined her day, reiterating that it's her park and that she can do whatever she wants. And she peppered in several swear words throughout her entire tirade. I took the opportunity to snap a picture of her and her license plate and Google the local non-emergency line and dial. This makes her then visibly angry and she looks like she's gonna start coming across the parking area towards me until I start talking into the phone about how I'd like to make a report about an aggressive dog and a woman in the park. The entitled woman then proceeds to get into her car and leave in a hurry at that point, still cursing and swearing at me, which definitely helped confirm the validity of my call. Now, just to add in, I decided to call the non-emergency line because while her dog didn't bite me, her utter lack of concern and her behavior, coupled with her dog being aggressive, makes me worried that this won't be an isolated issue. The park in question has a large play area for children near the parking lot, and I would hate for this woman's entitlement to result in a child or someone else and their dog being harmed by her lack of desire to follow the clearly posted rules to keep the dogs on a leash. Now, I don't like the stereotype, but this woman is the epitome of entitled Karens. She was in her late 50s, she was white, she had that haircut, and she was driving a new green Kia Sport. But this Karen either needs to get back on her meds or start taking some, because the absolute conviction she kept screaming about the park being hers was completely off the charts. Yeah, that Karen was absolutely crazy. There's no way in the world that park belonged to her, and the fact that she wasn't calling off her dog right away was insane in my opinion. Like, what was she thinking? She clearly has a dog that's not well trained or has any kind of, I don't know, discipline in its life, and And she's clearly not a good owner because the dog didn't come back right away. But also, that's a German Shepherd. They use those dogs for police dogs. Like, come on, man. She's got to be a better owner than just letting it run around and do whatever it wants. Like, the original poster had to hold their dog over their head just to avoid the German Shepherd. That's insane in my opinion, and honestly, there's just no good excuse. So hopefully this lady gets in trouble in some kind of way because her behavior was completely unhinged. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for not paying for a road that my neighbors were trying to build next to my land? Because even though they tried to say that I would pay for 1/3 of it, I put my foot down and I told them that no, I'm not going to pay for it, causing them to get upset and call me selfish and greedy. Here's what happened. Okay, so here's the thing. A developer in our area went bust, and plots of land behind and next to my land were for sale for a pretty good price. So suddenly, I had new potential neighbors. One day, a guy appeared on my land, introduced himself, and told me that he had bought the land behind me and asked if I would agree to allow them to build a road on the border of my land. As the person who owns the land next to me don't want to go in the middle of his land, but he would agree to have it on the border of our two lands, as he could also use the same road as his driveway. So I agreed and I told him sure, but the only condition is that I can also use the road if I need to access that side of my land for whatever reason. So he has to do all the paperwork, and when everything is ready, we can make it official. We exchanged contacts and everything seemed to be great. A few days ago, I got an email with an attachment and with plans and everything else, and the cost for all of this was divided to 3, assuming that everyone, including me, would pay 1/3 of the cost. The future neighbor next to me replied that he would only cover part of the cost of what he would use, as he would only use about half of it. Well, I replied to his email by saying something like, "I'm really sorry if there was a misunderstanding, but I will not be paying for the road because I don't need that road. I will allow you to build a road with my only condition being that I get to use it if I need to." Well, this guy called me up and he was very mad at me, stating that I was selfish and greedy and that I expected to use something that others built and it would be so expensive for him. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, I don't think you're the jerk at all. These people want to build their roads and they asked for permission and you said yes. Like, in no part of that conversation did it ever include you having to pay for a single thing. Because if that was the case, then they honestly should have brought that up in the beginning. Like, it's very dishonest for him to be like, okay, here's everything you need, and then suddenly you're finding out, oh wow, you're paying for 1/3 of this road. Like, no, I didn't agree to that. I'm definitely not going to do that. Your gift to them was allowing them to make the road in the first place, not be responsible for it by having to pay for a single cent, especially because it's not on your property. So no, if anything, your neighbor is definitely the jerk, because it really seems like he was trying to pull a fast one. Am I the jerk for not inviting my half-siblings to my wedding, who I have literally not seen in over 20 years? Because right now my dad is calling me selfish, and at this point I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my fiance and I are having a small wedding with only about 40 people attending, but with everybody who would be going, I did not invite my 3 half-siblings who live in another country on the guest list. I have never met one of them, and it's been over 20 years since I saw the other 2. At a meeting with my parents and in-laws to discuss the wedding, my father said that one of my brothers will be in my home country and that I should invite him to the wedding. I told him that my fiance and I did not include any of my half-siblings in the guest count, as we wanted to have a small and intimate wedding with people close to us. My dad then said that he was disappointed that I didn't at least invite my brother, who would be in the country at the time of the wedding. I told him, I'm sorry, but if I invite them, I'd have to invite their spouses and possibly their children. That's an additional cost for 8 people to an already tight wedding budget. Also, I wasn't invited to the weddings of my 2 married siblings, so I really didn't think that it would be a big deal. Well, when I said that, my dad got upset and said that if money was the issue, why didn't my fiance and I accept his offer to assist with wedding cost? He said that I was being selfish and that we are still family even though we didn't grow up together. So am I the jerk for not inviting them to my wedding? Because right now I really don't know what to do. No, I definitely don't think you're the jerk, because you know what? This is your wedding day. You and your fiance decide who you want there and literally nobody else. You haven't talked to these people in what, 20 years? And suddenly your dad's like, oh, you've got to invite them. You have to have them involved in your wedding. And like, you pretty much said it best. Why should they be involved in your wedding when you weren't involved in theirs? That literally makes no sense, and there's no reason for you to reciprocate something you never got in the first place. So if you don't want them at your wedding, then that is honestly the end of it. Because trying to force something like that, especially on such a special day, in my opinion, is incredibly inappropriate. An entitled lady screams at me at a stoplight, demanding that I change the color of my Ford Ranger simply because our cars had matching paint jobs, and she said that I was copying her. And I'm honestly still confused by this interaction, because the way this lady was acting was truly insane. Here's what happened. Okay, so this happened at a stoplight stoplight a couple weeks ago and it still makes me giggle. I drive a 2019 Ford Ranger in a color called Hot Chili Pepper Red. It's an orange and red color that turns out to be a candy coat of orange over red. It's one of their expensive upgrade colors that's pretty rare because nobody wants to pay an extra $750 for it. And as a side note, I didn't either. I just got a deal on the truck. I happened to pull up next to a new Bronco in the same color, and the lady driving was pretty excited. But it turns out her excitement was extremely pissed off because my truck was the same color as hers. According to her, it was a limited edition color that was exclusive to a certain package in the Bronco that year, and she said that I was copying her. She accused me of painting my truck to copy her car and actually demanded that I change it back. And she said this in a really screeching, high-pitched voice. Now, all of this was happening at a stoplight, and I just sat there watching this grown adult lose her ever-loving mind over the color of our cars. And it only later occurred to me that I really should have recorded the interaction. Now, given that there's around 10 to 12 different factory colors in a maker's entire lineup, I'm not sure how she thought that this was a color unique to her. I know the higher-end badges like Porsche will make a custom color for you, but this is Ford, the company that once offered cars in any color you like as long as it's black. So I feel like she's gonna have a lot of problems in life because the way she reacted to my car being the same color as hers, honestly, is very weird. Yeah, that's a really strange thing to be upset about because seriously, what is she mad over? People can have the same colored cars as somebody else, like that is not that unusual. And for her to jump to the assumption that, oh yeah, you're copying her and you need to change it back right now. And it makes me think like, what, like right now? Like in the middle of this stoplight right now? Or like, when do you want me to do that? So truly, I think some people are just born to try and complain about something in front of them. And this lady absolutely fits that description. Entitled bike riders in my city are making our lives a living nightmare by literally forcing people to walk on the grass as they have completely taken over the sidewalk. Here's what happened. I live near a busy street and it does have a bike lane which seldom gets used. Bicyclists just use the sidewalk and they will regularly run people onto the grass. Basically, if you're not using a bike, you're forced to walk in the grass next to the sidewalk since the cyclists basically feel like it's theirs. Well, I was walking to work and a bike rider decided that I wasn't moving fast enough. He then called me two names. He called me a fat pig and piggy. And you know what? I was really self-conscious most of the day because you kind of get to know locals and I could get a customer complaint. So I was upset and I wanted to call in sick because what if he shops at my store? I don't want my managers to know that I was being picked on just for my weight and size. This is such a common occurrence and I don't want to be seen as entitled, but I might have to just walk in the bike lane since it might be safer. And I think that I might be entitled since I wasn't moving fast enough and I was in the way. I just feel like maybe I shouldn't be commuting like this and I don't want to quit my job and go somewhere further away. I wish there was some kind of alternative route. So am I entitled for thinking I could use the sidewalk or should I just use the bike lane? I mean, literally, no one uses the bike lane. Are the bike riders being entitled for forcing people to walk on the grass? I'm honestly just so scared of getting hit by cars. And at this point, I really don't know what to do. No, you're definitely not entitled and you're definitely not the jerk. The sidewalk is definitely meant for people to walk on, and the fact that these bike riders are literally making people walk in the grass, in my opinion, is so inappropriate. And you know what? Next time someone says that to you, you shouldn't feel bad about yourself in the slightest. You did literally nothing wrong because they're the ones with a problem, not you. You're just minding your own business trying to get to work. And I know if I was in your shoes and someone called me a fat pig or piggy, I would be saying something back right away, like that is not gonna fly in my book for a second. You can't just disrespect someone like that, especially when that person literally didn't do anything wrong. So no, in my opinion, I think you should absolutely continue to walk on the sidewalk to work because that's literally where you're supposed to be. And if these bike riders don't like that, then they can go back to the bike lane, which is exactly where they're supposed to be in the first place. An entitled coworker gets exposed for not being an actual engineer after he freaks out on another coworker. And I'm honestly still baffled that this guy got hired in the first place, and I'm really glad that this guy ended up getting fired. Here's what happened. So this happened at work last year and I wanted to share it. So I work for a big tech company as a building maintenance tech. I do repairs, handle contracts, move office furniture, all sorts of things. But most of my coworkers are tech types with engineering degrees. Some of them are nice, down-to-earth kind of people, but many of them let their importance get to their heads. And the guy that I'm about to describe absolutely takes the cake. So we had a very, very nice desk set aside in an empty office. It was meant to be moved into the office of one of our bigwigs, but she was out of town for a few months, so we were storing it until we had her input on what she wanted removed to make room for it. Well, this low-level new hire engineer decided to set up shop in the spare room that we were keeping the desk in. He was told that as long as his supervisor was okay with it, he could stay, but that we would be coming to get the desk any day and to please not get attached. Well, the day comes to move the desk, and and this guy lost his mind. He was pissed off, yelling that he deserved that desk. He was an engineer and how dare we? My team just kind of shrugged and took the desk anyways, so he turned his rage onto the poor front desk guy for some reason and just went off. Well, the front desk guy doesn't take crap from anyone and got this guy's supervisor and HR involved, which opened up an investigation into Mr. Big Shot Engineer himself. And you know what they found? He lied on his resume. He was in no way qualified for his position. I guess a fresh set of eyes saw some kind of red flag that the hiring manager hadn't. So yeah, he was promptly fired. And it's amazing that he almost got away with it and decided to blow up over a stupid desk that he definitely did not deserve. Okay, this story is crazy to me because how do you get a job as an engineer if you're not an engineer? That hiring manager sucks at their job. Like, holy crap, that is crazy to me. Like, sure, the way he reacted after having the desk taken away and him bragging about being an engineer was all like really kind of weird as it is. But the fact that he even got hired in the first place is like blowing my mind right now. So yeah, his attitude was very wrong, and it's probably a really good thing that he ended up getting fired. An entitled Karen gets her iPad stolen and then decides that it should be everybody else's problem, as she had a meltdown in a way that I've never seen before in my life. Here's what happened. So I work as an administrator in an elementary school, and last Monday morning, a very agitated coworker came asking for help. Apparently, someone broke into a mother's car and stole her iPad while she was dropping her kids off, and that's really bad. Only I have access to the surveillance footage, so of course I agreed to help. I only need to know which car it was and where it was parked. So we both went out to look for the mom so that we could ask her for this information. And when we find her, she was yelling at a group of teachers, demanding to see the camera footage and saying that she knew this school was horrible and just full of thieves. She was so upset she didn't want to talk to me and just left in a rage. And to be perfectly honest, I thought this was very understandable. I went over to her kid's teacher to ask exactly how it happened, and then everything turned really awkward. Apparently, the mom's car wasn't in our parking lot when it happened, and she decided to leave it on the street so that she could save time. She also left her car unlocked, and the iPad itself was in the passenger seat in a bright pink case. And to top it all off, she never activated the Find Me feature on the iPad. Now, because this wasn't in the school grounds, there was no clear camera footage. The best that I could find was her car in the distance with passing traffic blocking the view. I watched the whole 10 minutes, starting from where they got off the car to when she realized the iPad wasn't there anymore and came storming back. I saw several people pass by during that time, but at no point could the actual theft be seen in the first place. I did notice a blurry man take a longer time than everyone else walking by her car, so we pointed this out when we sent her the footage. Well, the mom was pissed. She said the footage was useless since she couldn't even see who the man was or where he was heading, but sadly there was nothing else that we could do. She then threw a big fuss and even put a bad Google review claiming that this school covers up for thieves, and apparently she wanted us to pay for the damages. Thankfully, it's been a week now and she has finally calmed down, but I'm just baffled at the entitlement of wanting everyone else to pay for her ridiculous mistakes. Yeah, that's such a weird way to act because literally that is nobody's fault except for hers. She left her car on the street and she's the one that let it basically get stolen out of her car. Like, how's that the school's fault? She's a complete moron for being like, oh, you're trying to cover up for thieves. And it's like, okay, but if you didn't have your iPad in a pink cover on your passenger seat, then maybe someone wouldn't have stolen it. Like, she literally put a target on her back and then tried to blame everybody else for it. Like, that's so weird, it's not even funny. So yeah, that lady was completely out of line and her attitude was completely unacceptable. An entitled Karen expects me to organize and basically pay for her entire charity that she's trying to run, claiming that because I already do this pretty much on a regular basis, I should be good to do it for her as well. And I'm honestly still blown away by her entitlement. Here's what happened. Okay, so years ago, I taught Zumba classes. When there was a tragedy or someone was in need, often a bunch of instructors from around town would get together and do a Zumbathon to raise money. I used to co-teach at a church and the classes were very well attended, like 2 classes per night, twice a week, with roughly 150 people per class. Every once in a while, the church would ask us to do a fundraiser, and we usually just announced ahead of time that we were donating that night's receipts to the church in case people wanted to contribute anything extra. Now, one woman called me because she was part of a walkathon or something like that, where you put a team together and the team raises money together to donate to the overall cause. She wanted me to donate the money that we earn from a regular class to give to her for her charity. Now, I explained that we were happy to do fundraisers for groups, but they would have to provide the venue and participate. We would promote their events in our classes and teach for free, but it was their event. Well, when I said that, she didn't like this at all. She figured since we do it for the church that hosted our classes, we should just do it for her too. I then pointed out to her that this was my job, and this is how I earn money to eat and pay my bills. She knew knew my co-instructor was a teacher, so she said that she talked to her since she had another job. I asked her if she had already asked everyone else that she knew to donate a day's wage to her cause, and she was not happy with me after I said that. And it honestly still astounds me that this person decided that the way to donate to her cause was to literally make someone else do all the work and sacrifice all of their time. Yeah, that lady was being super selfish and very entitled. The second you said this is your job should have been her cue to be like, oh, I'm so sorry, let me figure out a different venue or like a different option for my thing going on. The fact that she expected you to basically work for free and give your money to somebody else while also basically expecting you to organize the entire event was super entitled and so uncalled for. It also shows that she was not serious and just super lazy. She quite literally wanted you to do all the work. She wanted you to find a venue, to find pretty much everything that she would need, and it all came from such a place of like, oh, well, you're already doing this, so why don't you do this for me? And you know what? Now that I think about it, I'm even doubting if they were a charity in the first place. It kind of seems like they just saw a good way to make money fast, and they probably thought, oh yeah, these people will do it for me, I can take the money and run. But I really love your response to this lady, because it not only proved your point, but it also brought this idiot back to planet Earth. When you said to her, oh, did you ask someone else to give up their day's wage for your stupid cause? And of course she's not going to be happy about that, because that's basically what she was asking. She was asking you to give up your money to her without her doing any work. And that, in my opinion, is completely unfair and super ridiculous. An entitled Karen demands that I break the rules at my job just so she can get her way with her and her stupid kids. Things got so bad that this entitled Karen literally threatened to get me in trouble, as well as write a bad review about me, all because I was doing my job. Here's what happened. So I work in what is essentially a huge play place for children. There are no age restrictions except for one single room, which is limited to children under the age of 3. It also requires them to be supervised by a member of their group age 16 or older, because we are just there to facilitate play and make sure everyone is being safe. We are not babysitters. Everyone, the staff included, is required to have their shoes off when they're in the room. We don't want any dirt or mud or anything being tracked into the room where lots of little kids are crawling around on the floor. Now, we deal with people being mildly annoyed over these rules on a pretty much regular basis, but typically they don't make a big thing out of it. Recently, a mom came up to the little entrance gate to the room with her 2 kids. One was younger than 3, and the other was very obviously at least 5 or 6 years old. Before I can even say hello, she is telling me and not asking me that her 5 or 6-year-old will be coming into the room regardless of the rules because she doesn't have anyone else who can watch him, and her younger child really wants to come in. Now, I politely attempted to explain that I cannot allow that, since we take the age rule very seriously due to past issues, and we can get written up for allowing bigger kids into the room. Well, this entitled Karen makes a huge show of groaning and rolling her eyes at me, and then tells the other child that he can go play somewhere else, while she and the other kid under 3 years old comes and plays in the room. Well, this required me to tell her that she cannot have her kids off on their own without her also present. And when I said this, she absolutely lost her mind on me. She said to me, every time we come here, I've always been allowed to bring my older child in here with me. No one's ever told us that was a rule before. And she went on and on. I explained to her that if that was true, then my coworkers have made a mistake, and I was fully expected to maintain the age limits on the room. She then gets angrier and angrier and ends up goading her youngest into a full-on crying meltdown by telling him, this person is saying that you don't get to have fun. If he's not allowing us in, then we have to go straight home because I can't deal with both of you. It all wrapped up with both her kids crying as they're being shoved back into the stroller, and the mom storming off, swearing that she was going straight to our admissions desk to report me, and then she was going home to write a review. I asked around later, and I found out that she did go to the front desk to complain, and was apparently utterly livid when she was told that yes, it sounds like our employees did their job, as that room is exclusively for kids 3 years of age and under, and we do require that kids stay with their adults. But unfortunately, she still hasn't left a review though, as I was really looking forward to seeing my name mentioned in the post. Wow, you have to be seriously entitled to act like that in front of your kids. She not only worked those kids up to start crying as some kind of like manipulation tactic, in some desperate attempt that you'll give in to her weird demands. Because seriously, she was completely out of line. The fact that she wanted to bend and break the rules, in my opinion, shows that she's not a good mom, and she's just super disrespectful of those around her. And I just love the fact that she's like, oh, I'm gonna get you in trouble, I'm gonna leave a review, and I'm going to complain. But it's like, lady, the original poster literally did their job. They're trying to keep people safe and not get in trouble themselves. And it's also really good that the admissions desk was like, yeah, they did their job, because I've worked in places where that doesn't happen, where they turn it right back on the employee themselves, and you basically get thrown under the bus for for doing your job. So truly, I'm so glad that things worked out for you, and hopefully that lady never comes back ever again. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. An entitled jerk makes my coworker cry after he freaks out when he realized he missed a promotion that we were having. So I decided to step in and take over, putting this jerk in his place in a way that he will never forget. Here's what happened. Okay, so this situation happened quite a while ago. I'm working at a small mom and pop hardware store, and it was about 5 minutes before closing, and I was going through the closing routine of the store. But it's right as I'm doing that I hear what's going on in the distance. I hear someone scream, "What do you mean they're not answering?" Now, turning the corner is when I see a larger man yelling at the sales clerk. And this young lady was literally bawling her eyes out. So I walk up to my coworker, I get her attention, and I tell her to go ahead and clock out for the evening as I'm going to take care of this. Well, when I did this rude customer started screaming at me. He said to me, "Hey, where do you think she's going? I'm not done with her." But I responded by saying, "Yes, you are done with her. I'm taking over from here." The rude customer then says, "Oh, you're taking over, are you? What are you going to do about it?" And I just respond by saying, "Absolutely nothing. The credit card special promotion that you're complaining about is over." This customer then freaks out. He says to me, "What? No way, you piece of garbage. It says right here that you have until 5 o'clock p.m. I then say to him, "Yeah, in Eastern Standard Time. And we happen to be in Pacific Time. The credit card company's office that processes applications has been closed for 3 hours. And as a side note, I even had to explain to him what Eastern Standard Time meant. This rude guy then says to me, "So what are you going to do to fix this then?" I responded by saying, "Well, I told you I'm not going to do anything. What do you want me to do? Call an employee of that office to tell them to go back and process your application? If you think we're going to do that, then you've got to be kidding yourself. We are a hardware store, not a credit card processing company." This rude customer then says that he's not leaving until this is fixed. He goes on to say, "This is a public space. I have every right to be here." But I looked at him and said, "Yes, you are leaving as we are closing." And it was at this moment that my coworker walks by with her stuff to go home, and this rude customer decides to go back in on her. He says to her, "Hey, you little jerk, you really messed up." But I reminded him, "Hey, you're talking to me, not to her. And don't you dare talk to her like that. And as for a public space, that's the street. The sidewalk inside this building is private, meaning that we reserve the right to refuse business. Now get out because we're closed." And before this guy could even finish his next sentence, I said to him, "If you don't, there's a police station right across the street, and they'll be here in under a minute to trespass you and escort you out the building. So what's it gonna be?" This guy then looked at me incredibly angry and said to me, "Fine, I'm going, but I'm never shopping here ever again." And when he said that, I just smiled and waved at him. I said to him, "Okay, you have a good day, sir." A little later that evening, I call my coworker to see how she's doing, and thankfully she's doing just fine. She just needed a few minutes away from that guy, and I assure her that he will never come back to that store. I will ask him to leave and for her to not talk to him, and thankfully we haven't had any problems ever since. Okay, that guy's a complete moron because why would he act that way? I can't stand when customers come in and take it out on employees when special deals or special offers somehow expired without them knowing. Like, buddy, I am not the reason that expired, and I'm definitely not the person who put up that special in the first place. I'm just a worker literally trying to make rent. Like, what's your problem? And it's so telling that this guy's a massive coward because he would rather talk to the young lady that he made cry than someone who actually knew what they were doing and wasn't going to take that crap. Not to mention the fact that he tried to take one last shot at her and be like, "Oh wow, you messed up big time. This is your fault." But it's like, no buddy, this is your fault. You're the reason this all fell apart. So good for you for having your coworkers back, because this jerk absolutely needed to be put in his place. My entitled lazy sister refuses to take care of her dog and is constantly leaving me and my mom with the responsibility of taking care of a pet that she said she would care for. And I'm honestly so annoyed by this behavior that I seriously don't know what to do. So my sister is 25, but she still acts like she's 13. She assumes things will go her way and won't take responsibility when it backfires. You know that when she asks dad to go for a movie or eat out, she will try to get dad to pay for her meal or ticket, even if it was her idea. One time I asked which car I can drive, and my parents said that I should drive our Toyota. Well, she got mad at me when I took the car because apparently this car had a sticker going to an area that needs that sticker, and without that sticker you have to take a longer route to get where you're going, and apparently my father is supposed to tell me that I should ask all my siblings who's using the car before trying to use it myself. But the thing is that she did not ask my parents if she can use the car, and she never told my parents about the party she was planning to attend, which is what this is all about. She just assumed that people will ask her, and lo and behold, it all backfired, but she still doesn't see it as her fault. Well, last year my sister got a dog, and in my house house, we had 4 dogs, 3 toy poodles, and 1 male Labrador. My dad did something for a friend, and the friend was super grateful, and in return, he offered to give my family a dog. And my sister really wanted this female poodle. So now it's 5 dogs in the house. The thing is that my sister can now apparently have her dog breed with another poodle and make money from the breeding program. The dog was only 8 months old when we got her, but the problem is that my sister is a very poor owner and handler. She still goes out with her friends, and she assumes me and my brother can watch the dog. The dog almost broke my laptop by putting its paw on the screen and bringing it down. But my sister said, "Oh, you shouldn't have used it there." One time, my parents went out one weekend because my dad's cousin had passed away, and my sister left for a party and did not tell me or my brother about babysitting her dog. She just assumed that I will sleep in my parents' room and will watch the Labrador and her dog in there. But you know what? I just left. And as a result, the poodle peed on my mom's carpet, and my brother sent a photo to my mom. My mom then got so mad at my sister and tried to talk it out when she returned from the funeral, but my sister just walked away from her, and it really pissed my mom off. Now, what I hate so much is that she goes out with friends and stays with them until 2 o'clock in the morning, but she also has this dog that she needs to take care of. And I did tell her that she can hang out with friends and her boyfriend, but can only do it for maybe a maximum of 3 hours. Like, I'm sorry, but your dog needs to be taken care of. But she still does not listen. She doesn't bother to get her dog outside or in mom's room when she returns. Well, the dog last month went into heat, and it was a long weekend in my country. My sister decided to go out for 4 days with her friends, and I did not know this until the day itself. In fact, I only knew when she left. So she just left and never told us how to handle her dog. In contrast, when my mom went out, she would tell the kids what to do if the dog got sick or anything like that. But with my sister, we got nothing. It was really hard controlling her heated dog while the Labrador was going crazy. I mean, my sister wasn't there, and my mom did not understand why she made her trip with her friends so long. It easily could have been 1 day only, but my sister went for 3 nights. And that is when my mom decided to have the dog neutered. She told my sister about it, but my sister said no. But my mom continued with the plan. Well, fast forward, and the female poodle got neutered last Friday. And when that happened, my sister went berserk on my mom and lashed out. The argument lasted for 2 hours, and my sister cried in her room for another 2 hours. She wanted that breeding program to happen, but my mom neutered her dog due to her being a lazy owner. My sister thinks that my mom doesn't want her to see her friends, but all my mom was trying to say is to minimize time with them because she has a dog to train. Anyways, I'm glad it happened to my sister because she is incredibly lazy. Okay, honestly, I think your mom made the best decision for that dog possible. Your sister is a lousy pet owner, and in my opinion, people like her should not be allowed to have pets. It is so inconsiderate that that dog is literally left by itself, and then you and your mom and the rest of your family is somehow expected to pick up the slack when you did not sign up for that. Like, at that point, just give the dog back to the friend and be like, sorry, we can't take care of it. So hopefully your sister can grow up and do better as a person, because this kind of behavior is incredibly immature. Entitled customers made my time in customer service an absolute nightmare, and I'm seriously so glad I will never have to deal with these people ever again. So I've worked in customer service in some form for over a decade, and without fault, there's always the niche customer, the one who wants their order, their purchase, their whatever in a very specific manner. The weirdest were always in food service, and it is always the most left field request. If you get it right, they are always sweet as pie, kind as you could ever be. But if you get it wrong, then you definitely are in for it. Now, both of these stories are from my teenage years, so they are pretty old. When I was 16 years old, I worked at a fast food restaurant that is quite famous for its frozen treats. And through that job, there are 2 customers that still stick with me. The first was a man who I dealt with at least once a week in the drive-thru. He always ordered some kind of meal combo and a frozen dessert. He would order his meal by number and would order his frozen dessert, and as he left the speaker, in no more than a regular speaking voice, he would say to put the dessert in a bag. Now, the only bags we had were paper, and they're meant for burgers and fries and so on. They're not meant, however, for the sauce-covered meltable desserts. The lids that fit any given frozen treat were subpar at best, and after maybe 5 minutes, you would have ice cream leaking out the sides and a lovely chilled soup waiting for you. And I knew from seeing this customer every week for years that he would pick this up as his lunch before he would drive 45 minutes to an hour into the city for his evening shift at whatever job he worked at. But if you forgot the bag, no matter how kind and how sweet and apologetic, this guy would still freak out. I mean, God forbid he put the dessert in his own bag himself. I mean, this guy would be livid if you didn't do this for him. I remember this very prominent purple vein would bulge in his forehead like a cartoon. He would yell and question every possible aspect of our abilities to even do our job. Management would then be brought over and more apologies would be given. And even the occasional refund was given as well. And every time over a free and honestly quite useless paper bag that he always ended up getting anyways. Now, the second story is from the same time but with a different customer. While still working primarily, if not exclusively, the drive-thru, we had another niche semi-regular. Now, what made my location in a chain restaurant fairly unique was that we were pretty accommodating to requests for non-menu items. As long as we could charge you for the ingredients, we would make pretty much whatever you wanted. You want a pickle sundae with chocolate fudge? Sure, we can do that. And seriously, that even happened once. We had a regular that was somehow associated with another staff member. They were like their third cousin or little sister's coworker or something like that. And they would come in, usually in phases, with some new request of some kind. For a month straight, it would be a large sundae layered with very specific toppings to mirror a dessert that they saw on TV. Then it would switch to a new milkshake of whatever flavor combination that they could possibly think of. Now granted, I will give it to the customer. They never complained about price before this incident. However we figured out how to charge them, they would pay it so long as it was reasonable. But there was the usual confusion with the custom orders of how to charge them in the first place. Do we use this menu item as a base and charge them for the extra toppings? We were never really totally sure what to do. This all came to a head when they decided they wanted what they described as a deconstructed dessert, but it was in essence a cup of various candies we use as toppings, with ice cream being used as the topping. Think of how you get whipped cream on hot chocolate at the cafe. Now, my location actually did have a price for a cup of candy that we could charge for, but it was about double the cost of any dessert that this woman had gotten before just as the cup of candy, and the adding of sauce and ice cream. So imagine that maybe her regular dessert was like maybe $5 or $8, because in contrast, she was being charged about $16 for this, which was the best that we could do, even with asking the supervisor on duty. Now, did I mention if we had trouble ringing her in for these weird requests, or even, God forbid, messed up the layers of her stupidly complex and ever-changing sundae were dictated to be, she would then throw an absolute major fit. Think honking, refusing to leave the drive-thru, screaming for a manager. Like, this lady would lose it. Because I worked drive-thru so much, and I became quite good at interpreting her visions for the food, I ended up dealing with her a lot. In the rare shift that I wasn't placed in the drive-thru, they would call me over anyways just to deal with her because I understood what she wanted. I watched her make multiple trainees cry and was often the one called over to deal with her if they messed up an order. I even had supervisors texting me when I was at school asking me how I would make or charge what she was asking for. But anyways, back to the cup of candy monstrosity. As you can probably guess, she was outraged. How on earth could it be so expensive? Well, because you asked for the most expensive candy topping as the base, and you wanted it in this size. But it's basically what she wanted, but just deconstructed. So it's like, okay, based on the fact that you wanted it to be a majority of the candy, and expensive candy to boot, it is this flat price for a cup of candy. And then adding charge for sauce and ice cream. I mean, if you really wanted a truly deconstructed treat, you would get a cup of ice cream and maybe like 2 tablespoons of candy, and a little pump of syrup that would barely fit a ketchup cup. But regardless of all of this, she just lost it. She screamed, she swore, she banged her fists on the steering wheel. She asked me how dare I do this to her, how she had been a loyal customer for years. She was so upset that it got to a point that I, the so-called champion of dealing with her, had to call over a manager. She demanded a refund for the item that she had not bought yet and continued to lose her mind, not to mention the fact that she's blocking the drive-thru. To make a long story short, she ended up getting banned. Maybe partially because if I wasn't dealing with her, she usually had her order refunded and given whatever she asked for free if we made any mistakes on it. But also, it might come down to the fact that she made so many employees cry. But I seriously think that mostly it was because I was the last person that they had that would be willing to deal with her entitled self. But in the end, she was banned, and we didn't see her for quite some time. We heard from the employee that she was associated with that she had been going to other locations, but none of them were as accommodating as us for off-menu requests. And she apparently got banned from a number of other places for pulling the same stuff. Eventually, she started seeing her roommate, and she would bring in a slip of paper and hand it to us. We knew it was this crazy woman's new order, but I, and I'm not sure how many others, would take it and charge it as we saw fit. We never heard another complaint, and I honestly feel bad for the roommate, as she got sent for food a lot, and she didn't seem to be treated well when I used to see her with a crazy woman. But thankfully, we didn't have any issues after that. Wow, I honestly know exactly what this person's talking about when they've had to deal with crazy customers who are just insane. Like, I've dealt with my fair share of like Karens and other people who are just irrational, and let me tell you something, nothing is ever never good enough. Like, you can literally do everything right, and you can miss one singular detail, and then they will lose their mind. They freak out, they go crazy, and then it's all your fault. Like, it's not their fault that they have unreasonable demands. It's your fault that you didn't get it exactly the way they wanted it. So truly, I've seen both cases like this in my time in customer service, and people who act like this are seriously some of the worst people you will ever have to deal with. My entitled father-in-law suggested that he sees me as a green card for his son, as opposed to a valuable family member. And at this point, I feel so offended that I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I met my fiance 2 years ago, and for us, it's just instant love. He's Korean and I'm white, so we do have a bit of a cultural difference. Besides that, the only real problem that we have is that my fiance had to go back to South Korea to renew a visa, and sadly, he got denied. So we proceeded with the K1 fiance visa since we met all the requirements, and our immigration lawyer advised us it would be good for us. We got approved, and his interview is September 12th. Then he'll come back to New York in October. It's been really hard with the long distance, but luckily I got to visit him in Korea for 2.5 weeks. On a side note, his parents are very wealthy, and I love and respect his parents, but they get under my skin. During this trip, my father-in-law made comments about my diet and how I need to eat healthier. We only shared meals together a few times, and when we do, we all eat the same thing, but I just eat a smaller portion. I'm also 4'11", and I weigh about 118 pounds, but I was recently diagnosed with high blood pressure. My dad has it, so it's part of my genes. But my father-in-law doesn't get the part that it's genetics, and he's been making rude comments this whole time that I'm here. There's been other things that he said that just get under my skin, but I simply don't have the time to list them all. During lunch, he told me that he's so lucky that his son found me so that he has easy access to the United States. I was confused and I asked him what he meant, and he said, "It's so hard to get into the United States, but now because of you, he has full access to the US. So I just took it that his father sees me as an easy way for his son to get a green card. And it took a lot for me not to start crying at that moment. My father-in-law also went on a rant that I need to learn Korean and that he expects his grandchild to know Korean as well. While I understand that it is important, my fiance and I are not there yet. He also made rude comments about how my fiance had changed his major from aviation to data science. And I've been hearing those comments since last December. It's like they never tell his son any of this, but they tell me instead. He then once again went off by saying how much money they lost due to the career change, and I told him, okay, I get that you lost money, and I won't understand that, but I just want your son to do whatever makes him happy. But right now, I just don't know if I'm being used for a green card. The love I have for my fiance is so unconditional, and I know how much he loves me. I can feel the love, and I never felt love like that before. But I'm really curious what other people think, because right now, I really don't know what to do. Honestly, if I was in your shoes, I would tell my fiance what was just said to me. Like, your father-in-law is completely out of line, and that is so horrible to imply. I would express that to my fiance and be like, look, this is how your father-in-law is basically talking to me, and I don't like what's happening right now. But regardless, if you really do love your fiance, then I would ignore this man with everything you have in you, because clearly he's just some weird entitled jerk, and you do not need his weird behavior in the slightest. An entitled Karen breaks into our mall, all because she was asked to wait until we actually opened for the day. Things got so bad that she actually got charged with breaking and entering by the police, and ended up getting arrested in the process. And I'm honestly still blown away by this interaction. Here's what happened. Now, before I get into this, I want to give some context. I'm a 31-year-old guy working full-time at my local mall. Usually, I just stick around the food court cleaning tables and stuff like that, but I will go and do some other stuff, such as cleaning the lids off the mall trash cans, cleaning the vendor areas, and stuff like that. One thing we have here at the mall are people who just walk around the mall getting some cardio in, or as we call them, the mall walkers. Now, they do usually buy some things, or get some lunch in the food court, but other than that, they're harmless, just minding their own business and going about their day. Well, a couple of weeks ago on a Saturday, which is our busiest day of the week by the way, I was cleaning the carpets when I saw some mall walkers waiting at one of the entrances next to a clothing department store that I will leave nameless as it will give away where I work. I tried telling them that they would have to wait for security, but one of them pleaded with me to call security and let them in. We usually open the doors at 9 o'clock even though the mall opens at 10 o'clock, so me being the people pleaser that I am, which I am slowly but surely working on, I gave in and I called security. My boss, while he wasn't raging about it, still was not pleased and told me that I can't do that anymore, especially on Saturdays as we would only have one security guard on call. He said that the only thing I could do is ignore them, but if I wanted to tell them that they'd have to wait for security, then don't call them if they beg me to do that. So a couple of days ago, I was doing my rounds and I saw some mall walkers waiting outside the entrance of the food court. So I told them when the mall opens and that they would have to wait. Some of them asked me to call for security, but I told them that I couldn't do that anymore. Some were angry, but they accepted it, except for one lady in particular. She practically banged on the door and demanded that I call security, screaming that I needed to let them in at that very minute. One of the other people there told her to stop, but she was having none of it. I remember her screaming, "I did not come all this way to the mall just to get turned away. I don't care what time you open. I want in and I want in right now." But again, I told her that she has to wait until 10 o'clock in the morning, and it was then that she started going off on me, telling me that I'm a terrible employee. Now, I will admit I rolled my eyes and I just walked away, and when I did that, this made her rage. And she actually started punching the door and screaming at me to come back, which of course I didn't. Now, I did contact security to warn them about her, and they said that they would keep an eye out. Well, not even 5 minutes later, I hear a commotion in the vendor area of the food court, which was in between a sushi bar and a bakery. I contacted security again to tell them about it, and they said they were en route. Well, it turns out the entitled Karen had snuck into the vendor area, leading to both the food court and the jewelry kiosk, and one of the mall employees told her that she couldn't be there. But this again made the Karen go into a rage, and she got in the employee's face and got physical. Now, one thing to note is that this Karen is a white woman who had to be in her 40s, and she was throwing down with a mixed race woman who had to be in her late 20s to early 30s. The Karen was told that she could either just leave the mall and take a permanent ban, or she'd be arrested for breaking and entering and for assault. And I also should note that I was a witness to this conversation between the Karen and the guard. The Karen then told this guard something that I honestly never expected. She said to them, "Or as a third option, you can get lost and let me walk the mall." And it was then at that moment that she said something incredibly racist. This made the guard jump up and call 911, and they came once the doors had opened. Karen was then taken to jail for breaking and entering, as well as assault and resisting arrest. And it's like, seriously, what is with these Karens and resisting arrest? It's a mystery that I'm sure will never be solved, because this lady was completely out of her mind. That's crazy, because seriously, who in their right mind would do that to themselves? And I really mean it when I say do that to themselves, because seriously, this was a very clear and obvious choice that this entitled Karen made. She very easily could have waited until 10 o'clock to have the doors open for her and not try to break in through the back door or something like that. And then she tries to fight the employee. It's like, how did you think that was gonna go? Did you think screaming at someone as you're breaking into the mall was gonna help you out in some way? Was she convinced that, oh yeah, they're gonna let me walk around once I get in here and give them a piece of my mind? Like, no, stupid, you're gonna go to jail. You're literally going to jail for breaking and entering and assault. Not to mention resisting arrest, which is something I can completely see happening. But like, seriously, what was she thinking? It literally just doesn't make any sense, and she definitely had what was coming to her. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My entitled aunt ruins her standing with the family, as well as the inheritance that she was supposed to receive from my grandmother. And despite it all, I'm so glad this situation's been resolved, because what she put us through was truly obnoxious. Here's what happened. So for some backstory that's going to be relevant to the story, in December of 2020, my father agreed to put his father into a nursing home to protect his sister, who is my aunt, from an investigation involving the mistreatment of an elder and getting my grandmother moved into state care. Because of my aunt's negligence, my grandmother had been hospitalized 3 times in 2 months. Ironically, in October of 2021, my aunt would end up in a nursing home after she burned herself with a heating pad and then didn't get medical treatment until the burn was badly infected. In January of 2022, my grandmother passed away at the age of 94 years old. In my grandparents' will, they split their estate between 2 children 50-50. However, because neither my father nor my aunt was on the deed to my grandparents' house, it was signed over to a probate lawyer who would be tasked with selling the house. When my father started going through his mother's affairs in February of 2022, he discovered that the state was on the verge of taking the house because the only bills my aunt bothered paying were the electric bill and the cable bills, and she had not paid property taxes since 2020. My father also discovered that there were 2 massive liens on the house, totaling to about $200,000. One from the nursing home my grandmother had been in, all because my aunt didn't pay them either, and the other one because my aunt convinced my grandmother to take a home equity loan out on the house so that she could buy a car. Initially, she was only supposed to take what she needed for the car, or roughly $6,000. However, my aunt went behind my grandmother's back and would end up taking the full $100,000 the bank offered them. My aunt had been able to co-sign for the loan, so she was authorized to take the full amount. She also never made any monthly payments on the loan because she legitimately thought that loans were money that banks banks just gave to people for free with no strings attached. My aunt never told anyone what she did with the remaining $94,000, but the rest of the family is suspecting that she gambled it away at local casinos. My aunt was never given full access to my grandmother's bank account, which she had almost completely drained before my grandmother passed, meaning my father had to pay any outstanding bills out of his own pocket, even though he was eventually reimbursed by the lawyer. Some moment between late 2022 and March of 2022, in an attempt to buy herself some time to recover enough to leave the nursing home and thinking that the house couldn't be sold if someone's living in it, my aunt convinced one of her friends to move into my grandmother's vacant house, unbeknownst to my father and the lawyer. And as you can imagine, things got messy when my father found out. Initially, my aunt told my father that the man was there to take care of her 2 cats. However, even after my aunt was court-ordered to sign her 2 cats over to my father due to neglect, the man simply refused to leave. We eventually found out he had broken his lease, moved out of his apartment, and had nowhere else to go except for his and my aunt's daughter's house, who admittedly refused to let her father move in with her. Around April, my parents started to deep clean the disgustingly dirty house with a man still living there, and he did everything in his power to obstruct my parents' efforts. He would call up claiming that he was sick with COVID, which my parents almost always called his bluff on, since he was physically disabled and never left the house nor had anyone but my parents visit. One day, he said to my mom that my aunt said apparently he'd be able to live there forever and that my father didn't have the guts to kick him out. Well, my mom told my father what had been said, and the very next day, my father gave this guy an ultimatum. My father said to him, either you leave on your own by May 1st, or I will be evicting you. Well, the man chose the eviction route because apparently my aunt told him that they can't legally evict a disabled person, and he believed her. He ended up having to move in with his daughter, who is no longer speaking to my aunt because my aunt has ruined that woman's livelihood on multiple occasions. However, before he left the house, per my aunt's orders, he stole several valuable pieces of jewelry, including a box of rings that had been willed to her cousins. Thankfully, we were able to get the stolen jewelry back in 2023 after the probate lawyer had to send the police just to retrieve it. Because of the whole squatter incident, we missed a massive housing boom, where houses were selling for significantly more than what they were worth, and the house was put on the market during a slump, and the house ended up being sold for almost $150,000 less than what it was worth. And it led to another lengthy legal battle with my aunt because she refused to sell or throw out any of her furniture until she was court-ordered to do so. Given what the house sold for and deducting the lien from the home equity loan, at the end of all of it, my father ended up just getting $60,000, while my aunt ended up getting just under $50,000. My aunt got less because the probate lawyer charged her more than he charged my father, because she was the one who had drawn things out for so long. Around that time, my aunt had been deemed unfit to make decisions for herself by a judge, and several of her doctors ended up signing her half of the inheritance to my father to avoid losing it to the nursing home that she was in. My aunt passed away on August 1st at the age of 68 from multiple organ failure caused by years of heavy smoking, ignoring her diabetes, and refusing to consent to a surgery that would have likely saved her life. We didn't have a funeral for her. We simply had her cremated, and her ashes along with pictures and other personal belongings were given to her older daughter. My aunt's younger daughter tried to sue my father for the rest of her mom's inheritance, but the suit was quickly dropped since the money my aunt had inherited after my mother's death had already been signed over to my father, so my aunt's daughter had no right to it. Our one saving grace in this whole fiasco was that my aunt was in a nursing home for the entire process, because otherwise this would have been a lot messier. Wow, this story is both sad and also extremely frustrating. Like, it really seems like your aunt did everything possible to try and obstruct this process and everything that went into it. It was so unnecessary and so tedious for literally no reason, especially the part about having someone move into the home so that you couldn't sell it. Like, that in and of itself is just so obnoxious. So truly, I'm so sorry for all the deaths that have happened in your family, even with the death of your aunt, because if she had just been more agreeable, this entire situation could have been significantly better. An entitled Karen receives karma that she absolutely deserves after she calls out me and my family while we're on holiday. Here's what happened. So my family and I went to Crete on holiday. It was a lovely all-inclusive hotel with a beach close by and some decent food, drinks, a pool, and some sunbeds. Basically, all of the fun things you could possibly want. The hotel was mainly people from Denmark, and thinking back, I don't actually remember there being anyone else but Danish people. And for reference, I'm from Denmark myself. There was a woman and her husband who also spent the week at the hotel when we were there. The husband was very quiet and seemed to just be dragged around by her. We got quite used to her complaining at dinner, as well as her fussy way of marching up to the young holiday guides at the hotel and nagging at them, but we did not mind her much at first. Me and my family love experiencing local local culture. And while exploring the city we were in, on top of a tall hill at the back of the city, we found a wonderful local restaurant. And it wasn't even really a restaurant. It was a Greek mama who cooked in her kitchen and let people eat on her terrace with a beautiful view of the sea. It was very humble and the food was honest and amazing. It was just delicious in every way. The mama was so caring and kind and kept coming to interact with us, and it was amazing. So we ate a couple of times by her along this week. One night coming back to the hotel, this entitled Karen came marching up to us. She looked at us and said, "How dare you?" Now all of us were really confused and we looked at her and said, "What?" This Karen continued, "You have paid for your all-inclusive meals and then you don't even eat dinner here?" We responded by saying, "Well, we paid for it so we can do what we want with it. And if we want to eat somewhere else, we can definitely do that." The Karen was still up in arms about this. She screamed at us by saying, "Well, don't you think that's a massive waste?" We responded by saying, "Well, I'm sure they're used to it." But this Karen said, "Well, I think it's disrespectful and you ought to know better." And after she said that, all of us just basically laughed and walked away from her. Well, the next day, her and her husband had booked this hike through a gorge. And I think it's called Samaria Gorge or something like that. You hike through this nature area, then you end up in the city, only available either by walking there or taking a boat. Then when arriving at the city, you take a boat and then a bus to go back to the hotel. Well, it's important to note that the lady and the husband weren't exactly fit. The reason we know what happened is because her and her husband were missing at breakfast. When they arrived later, her thundercloud was so heavy that the whole hotel felt it. We then saw a very shaken hotel guide, a girl maybe about 20 years old, coming up to try and comfort her, and then she told her the story. Well, apparently the Karen and the husband had taken this hike, and halfway through their bodies had given up. They were too far in to return, so they had to wait for a couple of donkeys from the city to come pick them up and carry them to the end destination. Once arriving at the city, the last boat had just sailed, and so they had to rent a hotel for the night at an absolutely overpriced amount, and then the next morning take the boat and then the bus back. After this, while the Karen still was like a thundercloud the rest of the holiday, we didn't really hear anything more from her. She and her husband stuck to each other in the corners and were much more quiet. I feel really sorry for them for ruining their own holiday, but I am glad for us, because they didn't ruin anything for us, but ever since then, just given us a lot to laugh about. So it honestly must be hard to be that entitled, and I overall really feel bad for the husband, because I can only imagine what he goes through on a daily basis. Yeah, it's really funny to watch people who like try to mouth off at you at your decisions to finally receive like that subtle karma for even speaking up in the first place. She really tried to be like, "Wow, you're wasting money by going somewhere else." But seriously, if I was in Greece and I had the chance to experience local cuisine, then I would absolutely jump at that chance. Like, what's wrong with experiencing the culture locally? So yeah, I find this situation incredibly funny, and it really seems like in a subtle way, this Karen got exactly what she deserved. My friend is making me feel suffocated and feels entitled to all of my free time just because her life is not going well. And after trying to set boundaries in some kind of way, she is still not getting the picture. And at this point, I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I want to start off by saying that I've tried so many times to be understanding and patient with my friend, but it's getting to the point where I'm feeling used, and it's almost like she thinks she's entitled to all of my free time. First off, I know that I'm overloaded. I'm working 6 days till late most days, doing interviews to try and find a better job, and juggling a busy social and personal life outside of work too. But this one friend just doesn't get it. She will literally try to cram multiple meetups, and when we toss around dates that we could actually meet up and hang out, she will use that as an opportunity to plan for both days. She'll say something like, "I know we decided on the 10th, but I got tickets for the 12th too." And then she would get upset when I'm not free anymore by being like, "Oh yeah, well you said you could go the 12th as well," when in reality it was just an option between 2 different days. Usually for days like the 12th, I'm either trying to plan mental health or rest days, run some errands, or I have another event I'm trying to squeeze in. Sometimes I flat out say no and pray that she doesn't ask why not. Other times I feel bad and give an explanation, but she gets sulky or literally tries to slither around my other plans to make it work. She does this every meetup, and I'm constantly having to be the bad guy that has to let her down, and it's honestly really tiring and a terrible feeling, and it's extra time, work, money, and mental stress. I know she does it to escape all the crap in her life, namely her crappy family, boyfriend, job, etc. I mean, she hates all of it, so I try very hard to compromise. I'll say something like, "How about we just do a call tonight? I am here to vent if you need it," but she's insisting on doing things. Fancy restaurants, shopping, concerts, movies, random expensive activities, etc. And the excuse is always, "Oh, I don't want to talk about it, I just want a distraction." But seriously, isn't that just a bit entitled? Demanding all of my free time, and I'm not allowed to say anything or negotiate. I'm just supposed to say nothing and go along with whatever she wants. And to top it all off, it's usually hugely expensive. In this economy, I can't be paying so much just to see her and fill her void. I didn't mind it at first, knowing that she's stressed out, but does she know that I get stressed out too? I honestly just feel really used. I've tried explaining to her gently that I'm busy and I can only do a certain amount of meetups a month. Like this is me trying to set boundaries, but still she will push and push even more and refuse to justify any of it. She expects me to comply, and then I look bad for constantly saying no. I'm honestly so exhausted and I seriously don't know what to do. Yeah, what you're describing sounds awful, and it does not sound fair for you at all. Like, it's one thing if you wanted to spend time and have any kind of I don't know, get together with your friend, but it's an entirely different thing than what your friend is currently trying to do with you. This sounds incredibly intrusive and very annoying. So I know if I was in your shoes, I would feel very similar. I would say to myself that yes, I need to have time for myself, and I can't spend all my time taking care of my friend, because after a while, just like the original poster, this really would be suffocating. And in my opinion, I think you deserve way better than dealing with that on a daily basis. My entitled cousin tried to claim that I didn't work hard enough in life, and he actually made the right decisions and did everything himself. But this is simply not true, as he has literally had everything handed to him his entire life, while I've had an awful upbringing from the very beginning. Here's what happened. So I had narcissistic and awful parents. I was hit mentally and physically all the time. I was demoralized, sleep deprived, and then some. As a result, I spent most of my energy during my childhood and my young adulthood just surviving. I got zero help from my parents, and they even actively sabotaged me. They thought I was nothing. They didn't support me financially, and they wouldn't even pick me up in the evening from the bus stop from the time I was 12 if it was inconvenient for them. So I had to walk the 2 miles hundreds of times from the age of 12 to 18, sometimes even during midnight. Still, I slowly managed to crawl out of the void. I got an awful part-time job, I managed to get an education, and eventually I got an okay paying full-time job, a girlfriend, and then I moved out. Now I'm 35, and unfortunately with this economy, I will never own a house or apartment, and will never be able to finance any kids or a family. Meanwhile, my cousin had the best family ever. His dad would pick him up at 1 o'clock in the morning from a party, when he had to get up at 6 in the morning the same day for his job. He was always encouraged and got positive feedback. He didn't have to work a crappy part-time job because his parents financed his education 100% during the first few years. Then he met a richer woman, and he moved out when he was 22, and she financed him for the next 5 years. So he didn't have to work at all and could concentrate on his studies and be finished several years earlier. After that, he got a juicy job with the help from his dad in a big company starting at the age of 28. And a year later, his girlfriend's parents gifted him with an acre of property for free. And this was in a better location and a more expensive state. So they saved thousands of dollars. They then built a home on the property and are now expecting their first child. And he is 32 years old. When we meet at family reunions, he has the audacity to tell me that I didn't work hard enough. And when confronted with how easy he had it compared to me, he just shrugs it off and claims that he didn't work very hard to get his master's degree and is working hard at his job right now. And according to him, he just made the smart decisions and managed to do everything himself while I didn't. Needless to say, I dislike him very much and I avoid his presence. But how can people's brains function like this? His parents finance everything, and then he had a wealthy girlfriend. He didn't have to work part-time, got a well-paying job in a big company through daddy's intervention, and got gifted a huge property, saving him over $100,000. And they get gifted large sums of money. We're talking $2,000 from his wife's parents and his parents from time to time, just to help them with the expenses of the house. I mean, how can anyone delude themselves into believing that all of this was because of smart decisions and managing everything by themselves? I honestly feel so offended, and I seriously don't know what to do. Yeah, your cousin's a piece of crap and he has no idea what he's talking about. This guy literally had everything handed to him, and he has the audacity to be like, oh, I made smart decisions and I did everything myself. It's no, you didn't. Literally everything was handed to you. Your house, your job, your education. This is not even comparable to the original poster, because the original poster had an awful upbringing. They had parents who did not support them and quite literally did nothing for them. For this guy to be like, oh, you just didn't work hard enough. That guy's a moron, and I would not let that guy bother you in the slightest. So yeah, your cousin's a piece of garbage, and I don't blame you for feeling the way that you do about him in the slightest. My entitled sister demands that I hand over to her spoiled, rotten daughter a handmade doll that has very special sentimental value, claiming that I'm being selfish by withholding it from her daughter, and that I need to learn to let go of the past and not hold on to such childish things. And now I'm very frustrated, because after they left my house with my niece in tears that she didn't get what she wanted, I now feel like such a jerk, and I seriously don't know what to do. you. Here's what happened. So yesterday, we had a big family gathering, which meant my older sister and her 6-year-old daughter would come over. For half the day, everything was well and good, and after lunch, my sister got tired, so I volunteered to look after my niece when my sister took a nap. Now, I have a collection of stuffed animals and 20-centimeter dolls, which I let my niece play with when her mother was napping. Eventually, my sister woke up and joined us, and we spent some more time together before she announced that it was time for them to leave. Now, this was when my niece pointed at the doll that I was holding and said that she liked him and that she wanted me to give him to her. Well, I told her that she could get any other doll or any other stuffed animal that she wanted from my collection, but just not this one. Well, when I told my niece no, she got really upset and started crying, saying that her birthday was coming up next week and that she wanted that doll as her birthday present. But again, I told her that I couldn't give it to her, explaining to her that this doll was very important to me. Now, I didn't tell my niece in detail about why it's important to me because she's still too young to understand, but I will explain it here to give a clearer picture. I've had this doll for a really long time now, all the way back in the darkest time of my life when nothing seemed to go right for me. During that time, I was advised to find an outlet, letting out my thoughts either in the form of writing or drawing, and one of my drawings was the design for the doll in this post. I spent a lot of time with it, shading it, coloring it, and all of that. Then I got the idea of turning the drawing into something physical. I searched and searched, and eventually I found someone that I trusted that could help me with this. For months on end, we worked together choosing the materials, fabrics, and threads to make my doll's body, hair, and eyes. I was so happy the day that I had him in my hands, and since then, he has been my emotional support doll. I don't know if it's strange, but whenever I look at him, I just feel like I can overcome anything. So yes, he is very important to me. Well, my sister told me that maybe it was time for me to let him go. Again, I told them that I could give my niece any other doll or stuffed animal that she wanted, but this one is very special to me and she cannot have it. Well, when I said that, my niece cried harder and started screaming. My sister then told me that I was being an overgrown child and that I needed to act my age and stop clinging onto a toy. It eventually ended with her leaving with my still crying niece, telling me that I needed to prioritize my family over a doll. So right now, I'm very frustrated by this entire situation, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Okay, first and foremost, I don't think you're the jerk at all, because I absolutely understand where you're coming from. That doll is so much more than just a toy for some stupid brat to play with and then eventually throw away. It literally represents you overcoming one of the darkest times in your life. It's a symbol to you that you really can push through the hard things in your life, and you can overcome any challenge in front of you. And in my opinion, I find that beautiful. Like, I really think that is very special, and that's obviously something that you want to hold on to. You don't want to give it over to anybody else because honestly, it is not for anyone else to have. So for your sister to stand there and say, oh, you need to grow up, you're being an overgrown child, you need to think about your family, that is all not only incredibly hurtful and disgusting, but also it's completely baseless. She's only acting like that because you, probably for the first time in this kid's life, told her that she can't have something. You denied this spoiled brat something, and it literally could have been anything, and this is the only reason why your older sister is upset, because clearly her daughter gets whatever she wants, and there's no boundaries or any kind of, like, I don't know, discipline for this kid. And now she's just upset with you because she has to deal with her kid's temper tantrum, all because she didn't get what she wants. And that, in my opinion, is the entire motivation behind why she was so nasty to you. Because ironically enough, everything she said to you literally could be turned around to her stupid, spoiled child. So no, you didn't do anything wrong, and I think the way your sister acted was so inappropriate. But also, and I seriously mean this, if you want to keep that doll for the rest of your life, it is definitely time to hide it and lock it up somewhere where they can't get it. Because I can see this happening. I can see this getting swept under the rug for like 5 months. Everyone's supposedly over it and they just kind of let the situation go, yourself included. And then one day, your niece and probably your sister are both going to try and get that doll out of your house. And that really is an awful thing to assume, but based on their reaction, I would not put it past them. And it is such a shame that you have to make these kinds of assumptions, but the way your sister and your niece reacted to you saying no kind of leads me to believe that they absolutely would resort to thievery just to get whatever this stupid brat wants. So truly, I really hope you're able to protect your property, because I'm seriously convinced that your sister has nefarious intentions, and it would really be a shame if she snuck in there and stole it from you without you knowing.
If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories.
Am I the jerk for refusing to share my inheritance with my siblings, even though the both of them are struggling financially? Here's what happened. Okay, for a bit of context, I'm the youngest of 3 siblings. My parents recently passed away unexpectedly and left behind a will. In the will, my parents left me the majority of their estate, including their house and some savings. My older older siblings were left significantly less, but they were given a fair amount as well. The reasoning behind this, according to my parents, is that I've always been the one taking care of them, helping them out financially, and managing the house. My siblings, on the other hand, have pretty much been absent. They've always struggled with maintaining jobs, and I've bailed them out financially several times. My parents believed that I would use the inheritance responsibly, whereas with my siblings, they were not sure. Well, this is where things get really tricky. Both of my siblings are now in a financial crisis. They've come to me asking if I'd be willing to share more of my inheritance to help them out, as they're struggling with rent, and one of them has medical bills that they can't cover. They've accused me of being selfish and not doing the right thing, since apparently I have more than they do now. But the thing is, I've already helped them out so many times over the years, often at the cost of my own financial security. I feel like my parents left things this way for a reason, and I should honor their wishes. I've worked hard to get where I'm at, and I feel like constantly bailing out my siblings won't teach them to be more responsible. I'm not rolling in cash either. I'm still working hard to build my own life and my own future. Now, my siblings have been telling our extended family that I'm greedy and heartless for not sharing more of the inheritance, and a lot of them agree. I feel a lot of guilt, but I'm also frustrated because I don't think it's fair that I'm expected to keep rescuing them. So am I the jerk for refusing to share any more of my inheritance? What should I do? No, I don't think you're the jerk at all. It seems like your parents knew what they were doing, and it's pretty obvious that you are clearly the responsible one of the family, and your other siblings are just not that reliable in the slightest. So in my opinion, if I was in your shoes, I would just follow your parents' wishes, because it really does sound like your siblings have had more than enough second chances, and in my opinion, it might be time for the both of them to stand on their own 2 feet. Am I the jerk for ordering a DNA test after I found out that my dad isn't actually my biological father? Here's what happened. I'm a 20-year-old female, and I've recently found out that my sister and I don't know who our biological father is. A few weeks ago, I was talking with my aunt, and we were a little bit tipsy, and she asked me when did I realize that my father, who we will call David, wasn't actually my biological father. Now, I was shocked to learn this, and I asked my twin if she knew about this, and she said to me that she's known about this for years, but thought that I knew as well. So I went around asking the family, and literally everybody knew except for me. I did feel a little upset that it took 20 years to realize, but it all just makes sense. My parents were married after my twin and I were born, and David, despite having nothing but love for all of us, did care for my other sisters just a little bit more. Now, it's important to note that I don't speak to my mother, and I haven't for several years now, so that was completely out of the question. So I decided to speak to David. David was very confused, as my mother said to him that she told us when we were little. He then apologized for keeping it a secret, but to him it doesn't matter. I am still his daughter, and he signed my birth certificate, and has been through everything for me. So basically, the story of how my twin and I came to be was from a drunken one-night stand, and then she started dating David a few weeks later. Now here comes the tricky part. Despite my family saying to leave it be, I went and ordered a DNA test to try and get some answers, because I just want to know who this man is. I don't want a relationship, and my respect for David hasn't changed, and I don't think it ever will. But if I know who this man is, it might help me figure out why I'm nothing like my family. So am I the jerk for ordering this DNA test? Because right now, I'm really not sure what to do. No, I do not think you're the jerk at all for wanting a DNA test for this. Like, for starters, this is massive news in your life, and you have every right to know this information for yourself. So no, you're definitely not the jerk. And anyone who says that you might be crossing a line by looking up this man, in my opinion, is completely out of line. My family is surrounded by a bunch of obnoxious old people who constantly remind me and my family why they don't want us in their neighborhood. And after dealing with this for over 6 years, I seriously do not see an end in sight. Here's what happened. Okay, so ever since we moved in, our elderly neighbors have taken it upon themselves to inform us just how much they don't want us here. For a bit of context, we live at the very end of a cul-de-sac, and the surrounding houses, save one that has a young single dude working from home, are all occupied by very entitled old people. I have a large family of about 4 to 5 people living here, and we have lots of visiting cousins and friends, so there tends to be a lot of kids running around both inside and outside, which seems to anger my neighbors as they're supposedly being loud and disruptive. They really aren't, but leave it to these idiots to find whimsy and joy upsetting. There was one day where my mother was talking with an officer in the street, all because of an earlier disturbance, when her ex got belligerent after being broken up with, and a lady 2 houses away from us comes storming up the road pointing her geriatric finger at my mom, screaming about how we always caused such a disturbance and how we should have never moved in. And if there wasn't a literal officer standing right there, I fully believe this lady would have slapped her. And of course, she was sternly told to go home and quit screeching, to which she tried telling him that we should be fined or something because of how often we are so loud. He told her to leave again, and eventually she did. I have no idea why she thought it was smart to insert herself loudly into a police report that literally had nothing to do with her. Another time, we had a lot of family over, and I believe it was somebody's birthday, which meant a lot of kids under 10 were running freely around our yard while the adults were chatting and grilling around the porch. Also, our pit chow mix by the name of Roxy was laying in our yard. Well, our left side neighbor's ankle biter dog was off the leash it's usually on and came sprinting into our yard, and I believe towards one of my little cousins. Well, Roxy is extremely protective of the children in the family and was already chasing the dog out of the yard before the adults could even see what was happening. She nipped the dog's tail, but not at all hard enough to leave any damage. It was the lightest warning she could have possibly given. Well, cue the elderly ex-cop neighbor coming out of his house, brandishing his weapon, if you know what I mean, waving it around like an absolute idiot, while yelling about putting our dog down and that she was dangerous. He kept saying that if our dog wanted to mess with his, he would aim right between the eyes, which is so stupid to do and to say in front of a bunch of kids, not to mention those kids' parents, but I digress. Now, Roxy is okay and still watches that little dog with her mean side eye every time she sees it, which is really funny. Now, on a lighter and pettier note, the last elderly neighbor has a beef with my Nana, who is also incredibly elderly. The tree on his property reaches over onto ours and leaves a bunch of leaves and sticks on our yard, which my Nana doesn't like. She asked him to trim his tree so it at least stops shedding onto our property, and he responded to this by excessively mowing his lawn. Every single day last summer, he would get out onto his riding mower shirtless and mow his lawn, sometimes doing an excessive amount of laps just to get some kind of point across. He has admitted to my Nana that he does it in spite of her because his mower is so loud. I don't understand this, because he's hardly got a lawn anymore. It's practically just dirt because it's mowed so low so many times. The problem is that my room is the closest to him, so I'm the one that really gets bothered by his excessive mowing. Closing my window helps, but seriously, he really needs a new mower. That can't be safe if it's that loud. Also, I don't need to wake up and see a shirtless, sweaty old man riding in my view. Well, it's been about 6 years later and these people all still hate us, and I honestly don't see this getting any better anytime soon. Yeah, your neighbors are crazy. How can anyone in their right mind be upset about people moving into a neighborhood when they've literally done nothing to anybody else? Like, it seriously sounds like your family is just minding your own business on your own property. So for these elderly people to be like, wow, you're so rude and obnoxious, all while being rude and obnoxious themselves, it is so ironic it's not even funny. So hopefully these old people stay away from your property. And if they do, I really hope you have some kind of cameras, because these people sound absolutely obnoxious. An entitled old jerk tried to take my 6-month-old child out of my arms, as he felt that because my baby was smiling at him, he had every right to pick him up and hold him as he pleased. And I'm honestly still shocked by this interaction. Here's what happened. Okay, so my husband and I were having a garage sale, during which an older white man stops by. I'm standing out front with my son in my arms on my left side, and my husband is sitting down, with my dad kind of in front of my husband, so he can't really stand up quickly without risking knocking into my dad. After looking around and not buying anything, this old guy comes up to where we were chatting with my dad, sees my son, and starts asking the tired yet very creepy questions. He would say stuff like, "How much for the baby?" And this is literally the third old person who said that today. Well, of course this old guy is directing this to my son, who upon hearing the word baby smiles at this man, and this old geezer took it to mean that he could try and take him out of my arms. This guy reaches for my son, who, mind you, doesn't even consistently reach out for me or my husband yet, as he's barely 6 months old, so I angle him further away, and I try to laugh it off while saying something like, "Oh, he's not for sale." Well, this guy literally tries to reach out again, so I shift the baby thoroughly to my left hip, and I angle my body away from this guy so that he is only getting the right side of my body. My dad realizes what's happening after freezing for a moment and says, "Oh, he likes his mama," and my husband is staring daggers at this guy, but as there are other people in the garage browsing, he's trying to keep his cool. This old weirdo laughs it off and wanders back to his car, while my husband, my dad, and I all just ask each other if that really just happened. I've had older people touch his feet without permission before I could maneuver us away at stores, but this was so uncomfortable and far beyond that. My husband was finally able to stand up once my dad moved and immediately grabbed my son, telling him that mama kept him away from the stranger danger. But I still feel like I could have been more forceful. We were all pretty weirded out by that for a while, and even my older neighbor who had her own sale going on was incredibly shocked when we explained what happened, because what he did was so unacceptable and he absolutely had no right to try and touch my son. Yeah, that is super inappropriate. You do not touch anybody's kids without their permission. You can't just be like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna hold that baby because it smiled at me." And it's like, dude, babies will literally smile when they fart. Like, what are you doing? Just because you're old, it doesn't give you permission to act like a weirdo. But overall, I think you handled this really well, because that guy was literally incredibly creepy. An entitled customer treats me like garbage after I check them out, give them their check, and see how they're doing, because the resulting awkwardness of this guy's weird attitude was just not worth it, and I'm now reconsidering my entire job as a server because this literally just doesn't seem worth it. Here's what happened. Okay, so tonight I had a table that was good throughout the whole meal, and everything went well and it was pretty typical. They asked me for their check and I checked them out. Then the guy went up to the bar and bought a drink and brought it back to the table, and they were just chilling with food in their boxes and everything else. Now, I thought it was kind of weird because he did ask me for the check, so if he wanted a drink, then why not just order one at your table? But whatever, I really don't care about that, as I was just thinking to myself, okay, maybe they're just staying to drink a little bit. So I checked on them twice. You know, like a quick, everything good? Do you need anything? Stuff like that. And maybe it was twice too close together, but they were right by the kitchen, so I had to keep walking by them over and over again. The second time I checked on them, the guy says to me, "Do you want us to leave? You keep asking if we're okay and we already paid." Now, I was shocked at this reaction because he had not been like that all throughout the meal. So I said to him, "No," and I said that with a clear attitude back to him. He then starts talking to the girl that's with him about me, but not directly to me. And I looked at her like, is he serious right now? And she's telling him that I'm just checking to see how they're doing. And then after that, I walked off and didn't say anything else to them. Also, to top off my night, I had 3 tables stiff me, which is the most I've ever encountered for a shift for me. So maybe my energy was off because I was not feeling it tonight. And then that happened right at the beginning. But my coworkers were saying that they got stiffed an unusual amount as well. I'm serving right now because I was in a high-stress job where I took a lot of work home for me. So I wanted to step back from that for a while, but sometimes I wonder if that actually is lower stress, because the way I got treated tonight honestly was so unacceptable. Yeah, I remember working in like a server job or even like a busboy job back in the day, and I always hated it when people had this kind of attitude when you're just trying to check up on them. And it's one where they like to pretend like, "Oh yeah, you don't want me here, fine, I'll just leave." And it's like, dude, I'm just trying to check on you to see how your meal's going. It is not that deep, my man. So I definitely feel for the original poster because I know exactly what this is like. And dealing with someone like that who treats you in this way is never a fun time. Am I the jerk for keeping my late wife's money set aside for our children, despite the fact that I have 2 new children in my life after getting married again? Because my new wife is demanding that I spend that money on our family. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I lost my late wife when our children were very young. She had money that was hers, and we had joint and separate finances. And anything that was her separate finances is being saved for our children. Now, where the question of this entire post comes in is that I have remarried, and I have a stepchild and another biological child with my present wife. And she was aware that I only considered this money for the children I had with my late wife only. But recently, she feels it's unfair because they have money set aside for the future that will at least help them get started after they turn 18, while we sometimes had to make sacrifices due to inflation. The latest thing was that my stepdaughter wanted to join these dance classes that would help her in her dream of professional dancing. Now, we could not afford these specific dance classes, and my wife was very upset with me. She wanted to do this so badly for my stepdaughter. And for those who will ask, the biological father is not in the picture and has also not been found. So yes, he can pay child support, and he has been searched for on more than one occasion, but my wife has no idea where her ex is. She wanted to know why there's money set aside for just 2 of the kids for their future, instead of using it now to make our lives easier. Well, I told her my late wife wanted this for them, and I believe the money should be spent on my children with my late wife anyways. I told her we still had a good life, we just didn't have all the luxuries. And just like a lot of families, we struggled when inflation hit, but we were still doing very good. My wife cannot access this money, by the way, and I know that will be asked, and I also have arrangements made in case something happens to me. My wife then said that we could pay for extracurriculars for all 4 kids out of the money and have that off of our minds, and then we could get back to saving. But again, I said no. She told me I'm acting like my late wife had left a will with instructions, which she definitely didn't, and she also accused me of treating my stepdaughter and my youngest child as if they are somehow less than deserving. I said the money is not mine. It was my late wife's and it will be our children's, and that my wife should stop treating it as anything else. Well, she responded by saying that I'm being very unreasonable. So seriously, am I the jerk in this situation? Is there something that I'm missing in some kind of way? What should I do? Honestly, I don't think you're the jerk at all because I completely understand where you're coming from. First of all, I think you have it completely right. This money belongs to your late wife, and I think you should save it for your kids. But also, I think it's incredibly inappropriate that your now current wife, even after knowing how you felt about the money that your late wife had, is treating you like garbage and basically being like, "Oh yeah, because you're saving that, you're basically saying that your new kids are not good enough." And it's like, wait a second, that is not what's happening here, and that is absolutely not fair. She's putting the original poster in such a weird spot in my opinion, and that just completely shifts the narrative in a direction that is completely completely not accurate. Just because you're saving that money for your first set of kids doesn't mean that you can't do the same for your new set of kids. Like, sure, that money's set aside when they're adults or something like that, but like, who's to say you can't do that for the new 2 children you have in your lives? Like, the way she's going about this really makes it seem like she's just being super selfish about it. She sees these extra dollars in this account and she's like, wait a second, why can't we spend it now? And that is incredibly inappropriate, especially since she knew your plans from the very beginning. So no, I don't think you're the jerk. I think your wife is being really selfish, and this, in my opinion, is a subject that absolutely should not be entertained. My entitled, selfish uncle is trying to claim that my house that I inherited from my grandfather actually belongs to him. He's even gone as far as doing construction on my house without my permission, simply because he's going to be renting it from me for 3 years, and he feels he's entitled to do whatever he wants to it. And I'm honestly so frustrated by this man that I really don't know what to do. I'm a 23-year-old male, and I was very close to my grandfather who passed away last year. He left me his entire estate, including the house after my grandma divorced him. Before he passed away, my grandma had asked him to let her son, who is my uncle, rent the house. So they set up a 3-year contract for $1,800 a month, and at the end of it, he could buy the house for $377,000. And this contract ends this November. After a lengthy probate process, the house is now officially in my name. My uncle asked if I'd extend the contract because of high interest rates, but I didn't want to because I'm hoping to buy my own house soon. My grandma pressured me, saying that it's family, so I reluctantly agreed to extend it for 3 more years. While I was waiting for a new contract to be drafted, my uncle asked if he could start construction on the house, and I said no. But then a friend of mine who was doing the work told me that my uncle had already started construction without my permission. So I went to check it out, and sure enough, major work had been done without any kind of permits. I confronted him, and he just denied it until I showed him photos. He then claimed that it was his house and that he could do to it whatever he wanted. Later, during a family holiday, my uncle and his girlfriend ambushed me, proposing a 5-year contract with lenient rent terms, no restrictions on construction, and permission to sublet. Well, I refused and said that I would have my lawyer draft the contract instead. During probate, my uncle and his girlfriend discussed what they would prefer contract-wise that left it more open-ended. I continuously listened to their wants. However, I told them in the end I would send them a contract drafted by my lawyer once the house was in my name. A few months later, my uncle, his girlfriend, and my grandmother sent me the 5-year contract they had proposed during the family holiday, and I just firmly declined. My grandmother then called and berated me for not signing it, claiming that if it weren't for her, I wouldn't have inherited anything from my grandfather. And at that point, I lost my temper. I said to her, "You've got to be kidding me." She then responded by saying, "Your grandpa would be disappointed in the way that you're talking to me right now." But I just replied back by saying, "Don't use my grandfather against me," and then I hung up. Well, since then, my grandma and my uncle have cut me off. I had my lawyer draft a new contract that basically stated it would be for 3 years, no subletting, and a clause requiring my approval for construction. And the rest of the original contract from my grandfather is the same. Well, now my uncle is saying he can only qualify for $350,000 instead of the $377,000 that he owes. And my family is actually pressuring me to accept the lower offer, accusing me of forcing him out. So am I the jerk for refusing his contract, insisting that he either pay the full amount, sign my contract, or move out? Because right now, the family pressure that I'm experiencing just for standing my ground is absolutely obnoxious. What should I do? Okay, first of all, your family is absolutely obnoxious. They're asking for way too much out of you, and they're crossing so many boundaries it's not even funny. Like, your uncle literally started doing construction on this house without any permission from you. And for him to be like, "Oh, this is my house," like, that is crazy and so unacceptable. And everybody is so entitled around you about this stupid house. Part of me almost thinks like, okay, you got $350,000? Sure, that's more than enough. Take it and get out of my hair. But if I'm being completely honest, I think you should make them either pay the whole thing or just accept the modified 3-year contract that you spelled out. 5 years is a long time, and even 3 years is too long for me. But if I was in your shoes, I would want to keep the house. Like, if this house can be mine in 3 years, and this guy doesn't have the money to pay for it, why would I not want to have it? You could use that to get a different house or just live there if you wanted to. And it's just so rich that everyone's like, come on, he's so close to the $377,000. But it's like, people, the difference we're talking about is like $27,000. That's not just some spare change sitting around. That's a lot of money. So I think it's a good idea that you're standing your ground, because the way your family's acting is incredibly obnoxious.
If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories.
I cheated on my husband with a person from my work, and I'm now in the process process of figuring out how I can tell him what I did, because right now I feel so guilty, and at this point I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I've been with my husband for the past 6 years, and we've been married for 3. I met him in our postgraduate program and fell in love. He is the most wonderful man and an amazing life partner. He does everything right. He cares for me through thick and thin. He was my rock when I battled depression. He makes sure of the little things and the big things. He gives me reassurance whenever I need them, and I need them very often. He tells me every day how lucky he is to have me, how much he loves me, and how much I make him happy. And trust me, I know the irony of the situation. We moved to a new country 7 to 8 months ago, and it's been a really rough time since then, dealing with the lack of a social circle, a new culture, no job, some financial struggles, etc. Now, I found a job, but he is still looking for one, and every time he would get rejected, it would be taxing for the both of us, and this entire process is really devastating. So now on to the cheating part. I met this 30-year-old male at work, and we talked for a bit as I was just trying to connect with people at the office and trying to make friends. And to be honest, I did have a crush on this person, and I told my husband about this crush as well. I told him that I will take care of it, but I didn't stop. I should have stopped talking to this person right then and there, but I didn't, and I realize it now. During one of the conversations, somehow we confessed that we find each other attractive, and that led to a 4-day conversation where we were sending pretty explicit messages, if you know what I mean. I felt nervous yet really excited the first day, and the second day I felt really guilty, but I just couldn't stop. I was also looking for any kind of traces of cheating on my husband's phone, and by the 3rd day, I don't really know why, but I just kept on going. By the 4th day, I felt awful, and I felt like I did something so horrible. So I spoke to this person, and I decided to end it right then and there, but I already broke my husband's trust, and he trusted in me blindly. I ruined our marriage, and we built it with so much love. I ruined everything, and this was all just a month ago. Since then, I have gone through different phases. Phase 1 is that I will just keep this hidden for my entire life, and phase 2 is that I will try to find any proofs of when my husband may have cheated in the past, but I came up empty-handed because he didn't. Phase 3 brought about the guilt. Every waking moment, I feel like garbage, and how he deserves so much better than me. He told me again today that he hasn't ever been lucky in his life except with me, but I messed him over here as well. He didn't deserve this. He needs to know what his dear wife did to him. He has the right to decide what he wants to do after what I did to him. I want to tell him. I've been wanting to for the past few days, and he can sense the sadness that I feel when I think of telling him, and he will even ask me if everything's okay. But he has some interviews, and if I tell him about me cheating on him, it will just absolutely destroy him, so I can't do it yet. So how do I even tell him about this? This will break him, and I do plan on going to therapy to work on myself, but I can't do that as we don't have enough money for that. Now, I really do love my husband, despite how hard it may be to believe. Do I wait until he gets a job, or do I tell him now? How do I even tell him about this? What should I do? Wow, this is literally devastating. Here you have somebody who is literally claiming, oh yeah, my husband's perfect. He loves me and takes care of me and does all these wonderful things. He's helped me through depression and all this other stuff, and I love him so much. And then she goes on to be like, okay, and by the way, I cheated on him. Like, what is going on right now? That is such a dichotomy here. You don't love this guy. If you loved him, you wouldn't have cheated. And I just love the fact that with people like this, they try to frame this as like, oh, I made a mistake. But it's like, no, that's not a mistake. What you did is literally a calculated decision. You made the choice to send those messages to that guy and entertain this conversation even further. Accidentally bumping into someone on the subway would be a mistake, or dropping something and breaking it on the ground, like that's a mistake. That's like an accident and you just didn't mean to do that, and you try to like fix things from there. But this right here, this is not a mistake. This is you literally blowing up your marriage all because you wanted to have some fun for 4 days. Like, how is that the solution for what, 8 months of trouble? And I totally understand moving somewhere new and not knowing the culture or anybody around there, as well as having financial struggles. But where in your brain did you connect the bridge of like, okay, the only way I can fix this is by cheating on my husband? Like, that is crazy in my opinion. You do not deserve this guy at all. And for me, the icing on the cake is you looking for your husband cheating on you, and then coming back empty-handed and being like, oh my gosh, I'm a piece of garbage. And it's like, yes, in this moment in your life, you are a horrible person. The fact that you did this to your husband is unbelievable. So you ask the question of when should you tell him? In my opinion, you should tell him like right away. Because I know if I had someone that I married and I loved, and I said, oh yeah, I'm so lucky to have you, and they were doing this behind my back, I would lose my mind. I wouldn't want to be with that kind of person. Like, that's not fair for me, especially when I'm trying to find a job and, I don't know, have a life. So sure, you didn't ask it, but I'm just gonna say that yes, you are the jerk here, and you definitely have an obligation to tell him the truth, because he does not deserve to be in a situation like this. I want to tell my strict mother about my secret boyfriend, but I'm worried about how she will react, as she has always been very weird about me having a relationship. Because right now I'm at my breaking point and I really don't know what to do. do. Here's what happened. Okay, I want to start off by saying that I really want to tell my mom about my boyfriend. I feel like it would be beneficial, not just for me, but for her as well. Whenever we hang out, I have to lie about where I am, making up excuses just to spend time with him. Sometimes I wonder if something were to happen to me, how would they even know the truth? It's also affecting our relationship because we can't do normal couple activities without me having to come up with a believable lie for my outings. I don't want to keep making up stories behind their backs. I want to come out and tell them, but it feels almost impossible. For reference, I'm a 19-year-old female and my boyfriend is 23. We met while we used to work together, and when we wanted to start seeing each other outside of work, I would lie and say I was going to school on Saturdays just to be with him. I used to go to school on Saturdays, so it seemed like a reasonable and believable excuse. When my mom was looking for someone to teach me how to drive, I introduced her to him, but only as a guy from work who was getting paid to teach me. The money she paid him for my driving lessons, he would just give back to me, and he taught me how to drive for free. And this also gave us time to hang out outside of work. Now, at first, my mom wasn't fond of him. She just saw him as the guy who offered to teach me how to drive at a cheap price. She would always warn me that while he was teaching me, it would be strictly professional, with nothing more going on. Sometimes she questioned my progress, saying to me, "You've been learning to drive for a whole month, but you're not showing much improvement." And she would even try to say, "Hopefully you're not doing anything else with this guy but driving." And the truth is, we often use our driving lesson as an excuse to go on dates and make out instead. She's always suspected that I might be seeing someone, but she couldn't quite put her finger on it. For example, on Valentine's Day, I said I was at school when I was actually at the movies with him. He got me flowers, and since he is my first boyfriend, I wanted to try and keep them. But looking back, I should have just admired them and thrown them away before going home because it caused so much conflict. She was suspicious and asked me who gave me the flowers, and I just lied and said some guy at school who was really into me gave them to me, and I only took them because I wanted to take pictures with them. But she just wasn't buying it this time. She was pissed off, I could tell, but she couldn't fully accuse me of anything. She just kept saying, "You think I'm stupid, don't you?" After she calmed down a bit, I decided to tell her another secret I was hiding to cover up the bigger lie. I thought the best thing to do was to reveal a smaller secret to distract her from the bigger one. So I told her I had something to tell her, and her first guess was to say, "You have a boyfriend, don't you?" To which I replied by saying, "Why do you always have to think it's that?" I then revealed that I had my septum piercing, which is something she was against. She was disappointed, but not as angry as I thought she would be, because it wasn't as bad as what she expected. And this has been going on for quite a while now. And now that I know how to drive, she thinks that I've stopped seeing him. After all, why would I still be in contact with him if it wasn't for driving lessons? If I were to suddenly introduce him as my boyfriend, especially since she's suspected it once or twice before, it would seem like a plot twist. She would feel betrayed and think I tricked her and played her right under her nose. So seriously, how do I make this possible and acceptable? I really like him, and I want my mom to know about his role in my life. She doesn't have to fully accept him as if we're getting engaged tomorrow, but at least know the truth. I'm tired of the lies stacking up onto more lies, but I'm struggling to find a way to tell her without all of this turning into an absolute disaster. I wish I could just tell her, and I wish it was so easy to just tell her some things that I've always wanted to talk to my mom about. But honestly, I can't do it, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Okay, first and foremost, I think you need to understand that you are definitely an adult now. You're 19 years old, and you can have a boyfriend if you want one. Like, I can understand that your mom is like super strict and really weird, but at least from my perspective, I think you will feel so much better about all of this if it's just out in the open. And don't get me wrong, you should definitely do what's best for you, because you know your mom way better than anybody else that could possibly like read your story. But from my end, I think it might be a good idea to like say something and be like, "Yeah, I have this boyfriend," because what you're describing sounds like a nightmare. You have to like lie constantly and make up excuses just to spend time with this guy that means a lot to you. So hopefully whatever you decide to do goes well, because what you're describing right now sounds absolutely obnoxious. Am I the jerk for demanding money back from my mother-in-law after she scammed my husband by using our 4-year-old son just to get some cash? Because right now I am very pissed off, and at this point I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I'm married to my husband who has a very manipulative and selfish mother. She constantly asks us for money, and we unfortunately give it to her because she always has some kind of sob story. She needs it for cigarettes, car payments for a car she hasn't driven in 2 years, and that is just the tip of the iceberg. Well, today was the final straw when she involved my 4-year-old son. She made my husband drive 1 hour to her house to pick her up to come all the way back to our house to visit my son. But then she made up this whole story about how she suddenly can't go anymore because she doesn't have a ride back. Now, my husband said he would drive her back, as he always does that anyways, but oddly enough, she said no. Mind you, she does have a boyfriend of 25 years that she lives with, life. And he also works and has a job. She said my husband needs to turn around and leave back to our house without her, and she will not be seeing our son today. And on his way out, she begs him for $200 so she can buy a birthday present for my son. She also begged him not to tell me about it. Well, obviously he told me, and I am so pissed off that she seriously tried to get him to keep this from me when it is literally our money. Now, he did give it to her because he always falls for her sob stories and her constant BS. She swears that she will pay it back on October 1st when she gets her government check, but she definitely won't do it because she never paid back a penny of the thousands of borrowed dollars we gave her over the years. And this is just something that she is known for, and I'm sick of it. She pretended as if she wanted to see my son. She made my husband spend over 2 hours of his day off driving when he could have just been relaxing with us, and then she tried to get him to lie to me, which just really set me off more than ever. I told my husband she has until October 1st to give it back to us, because otherwise I'm gonna call her, demand it back, and curse her out. And despite the fact that I will be blocking her permanently, my husband actually said that's a crazy plan and I just need to leave it alone. So seriously, am I at fault in this situation? What should I do? Okay, first of all, you are definitely not the jerk wanting your money back, because your mother-in-law sounds insane. She literally scammed your husband, and she scammed you as well in the process by getting that money from him. And the fact that this is not an isolated incident, and that this keeps happening, in my opinion, really points the problem straight at your husband. Like, this guy might as well be a doormat with money coming out of him. He just lets his mom walk literally all over him all the time. He doesn't have any say in the matter, and he's just like, no, it's fine, just let it go, leave it alone. And it's like, no, you cannot be serious right now. This lady is taking advantage of you. You can't possibly be sitting there and being like, oh, it's fine, she needs the money, because that is clearly not the case. So no, you are not in the wrong in the slightest, and I think you are well within your right to demand your money back. Am I the jerk for refusing to move out, even though my roommate is 7 months pregnant and is demanding that I get out of the house so that her family can have space to live? Here's what happened. Okay, so last week, my roommate, who we will call Becca, found out that she's not only pregnant, but 7 months along. She texted me that we had to talk today, and I assumed that she would be moving out soon so that she can have more space for when the baby comes in. Now, for a bit of context, I'm on a terrible salary, and I cannot afford anywhere else to live. So with that in mind, she wants me to move out right now so she can prepare for the baby. Even if I wanted to move out right now, the apartment rentals in my area are either too expensive or they are well below living standards, so I don't want to move. She went absolutely crazy the moment I told her I wouldn't move out, because according to her, I'm ruining her motherhood experience by not letting her family live together. Now, I pay rent here, and my name is on the lease until at least the end of the year. I'm not going to pull out of the lease, and I told her that if she wants her little family together, then she should be the one to move out, and I will find someone to split the rent with. Well, that made her start crying and saying how I just wanted to ruin her life, to the point that her baby daddy had to console her and tell me to get out of their way already. And I've not heard her stop crying ever since, but I think I'm totally valid that I don't want to leave. So am I the jerk for not wanting to move out? What should I do? No, this is not your problem at all. You are definitely not the jerk for saying, I've got a lease until the end of the year, sorry, but I'm not going. Like, why should you move your entire life around all because your roommate got pregnant? Like, if anybody should move out to find a bigger place, it should be her, because this is truly her problem and not yours. You're not the reason she got pregnant, and you're definitely not responsible for her future family and her child. Which, by the way, how does someone go 7 months without knowing they're pregnant? Like, that is super irresponsible and just so insane in my opinion. So no, I don't think you did anything wrong, and I think you are completely justified in saying that you do not want to move out. Am I the jerk for refusing to cancel child support from my sister after I had to become the guardian of her daughter that she was literally neglecting? Here's what happened. I'm a 34-year-old male, and I've been taking care of my sister's daughter for around 6 years. This all started when my sister got arrested for felony theft and substance charges. She's been a longtime addict. She's been a poor mother and a family manipulator. No one else in the family really stepped up, so I offered to take my niece in while my sister did some substance treatment to avoid jail time. From the very beginning, my niece, who was around 10 at the time, didn't want anything to do with her mom, and I thought that was odd, but over the first few months that I had her, my niece opened up about her mom treating her very poorly. So I sought a guardianship for my niece and told my sister that I would not willingly send my niece back to her unless my sister got off the substances and sorted her life out. Well, my sister initiated a legal fight with me to terminate the guardianship. I grew to love this kid like my own, and I didn't want to send her back to a bad environment. It cost me 6 figures over the course of a year and a half in legal fees, but eventually I won. I managed to marshal substantial evidence of my sister's ongoing substance problems, and the court relied upon a third party who basically reported favorably about my niece and my care, and about my niece's negative view of her mother. At some point in the legal process, as I was shelling out 5-figure monthly legal bills, I learned that as my niece's guardian, I was entitled to child support. So I filled the forms to seek it, and I ended up winning that as well. Now, the state oversees the support award and is apparently pretty thorough in seeking it, garnishing paychecks and even bank accounts. But now, years later, I'm starting to get pressure from the other family to forgive the child support. I have family reaching out to me saying my sister is doing better and just cannot get ahead, having to give up portions of her paycheck every month. With back amounts, it's like $30,000 in back support that I am owed. Now, I don't really need it if I'm being really honest. I make a good living, and it's better than anyone else in my family. In all likelihood, my sister's debt will never be paid in full, but I don't want to let it go. I've started telling relatives, hey, listen, that's great that you want to help out my sister. Why don't you pay me the $30,000 in debt plus the present value of the award until my niece is 18? Only then will I forgive my sister's obligation. And my relatives have all been huffy at that response. My sister initiated a fight with me, knowing full and well that she was back on the substances, that she lied about it, and got caught in open court. It was all such a waste of a large amount of money in my prime years that I would have otherwise saved and set aside to retire on, or pay for my niece's education. And you know what? I'm still mad about it. And my sister can owe me it pretty much forever for all I care. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, I don't think you're the jerk at all. That child support literally goes to the niece that she's neglecting. She's not taking care of her kid. She hasn't done anything to help out this child. So yes, in my opinion, if I was in your shoes, I would absolutely demand child support payments. Like, are you kidding me right now? And it's honestly so disgusting that family would be like, wait, stop, you need to forgive her. She can't get ahead on her paychecks. It's like, are you kidding me right now? These people stood on the sidelines and idly did nothing about this and are now taking the side of the addict instead of, I don't know, the kid who was affected by it. Like, these child support payments go to this kid. And to that end, I love the way the original poster responded. They basically said, oh, you want to help her out? Okay, pay me the money then. Because suddenly these family members scatter like roaches the second they gotta actually, like, I don't know, do something about the situation. So no, I don't think you're the jerk at all in this scenario, and I think that you're completely justified in everything that you're doing. An entitled Karen desperately tries to get me in trouble by making the false claim that I was trying to shoplift from the store. And even though I proved this lady wrong multiple times, she simply refused to take no for an answer, deciding instead to follow me around the store and try to prove to everybody that I was some kind of thief. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, I had a light bulb that blew out in my home, and the inside of the light bulb looked black and smoky. So I unscrewed it and I brought it with me to the hardware store. And I did that because that's generally the best way to get the correct replacement for the light. In the area where the shopping cart's undercover before you actually enter the store, I pulled it out of my purse and I set my purse in the cart. And then with the light bulb in my right hand, while pushing the cart by leaning on it with my forearms, I started slowly making my way through the store, figuring that I would see what fall decorations they had out, and if there was any random home decor or cleaning supplies, or some end-of-year barbecue sales items that I couldn't live without. After a while, I noticed a guy following me and trying to act all casual, and I really don't know why, but I'm pretty sure he was loss prevention. So, being the upfront person that I am, I flat out ask him, are you loss prevention? And when I said that, he stammers and then admits it, and says that someone saw me shoplifting and putting something in my purse. Now, I am bemused more than anything else, so I point to my open bag, and I told him, you can check, I don't care. And he sheepishly peeks inside, and then says something like, okay, you're good, sorry about that. And at this point, I can't help but ask myself. So I say to him, what exactly did I steal? He then says, that lady down there. And he nodded towards the end of the aisle where an entitled Karen was parked staring at us. And that's when he explains that she said that she saw me open up a box and put a light bulb in my purse. Now, I couldn't really think of anything to say, so I just held out my burned out bulb and I said, I haven't even gotten over to look at the bulbs yet. I was shopping around here first. I brought this to make sure I got the right one. The loss prevention guy then rolls his eyes and said something like, oh, I get it. Do you need me to get anyone to help you find the product that you're looking for? But I just responded by saying no, and I continued shopping from there. Well, this entitled Karen seemed to be very irritated that I wasn't arrested, or at least forced to dump out my bag, so she actually followed me around the store. Now, with the loss prevention guy, he was at least trying to be subtle, but this entitled Karen was not. She kept about 2 shopping cart lengths back and just stared at me, and I honestly just did the best that I could to ignore her. I would pick things up, read the packaging, and then put it back, and then she would pick it up after I moved on and inspect it, as if she would discover an empty box or something like that. Now, I was irritated, but I tracked down the bulb that I needed. I made a point of holding out my smoky and obviously burnt out light bulb right next to the fresh clean bulbs until I found what I wanted. But then I put that one back and I chose out the same light bulb but a different brand for slightly cheaper. paper. I then went to check out, and while I waited in line, I saw her at customer service pointing at me urgently. So eventually someone came over and asked how my shopping went. So I just held up my open bag, and I made a point of showing that it was completely empty, since I had to pull my wallet out to pay. I stood like that, not saying anything, until the employee apologized and left. And you know what the worst part about this is? At the end of the day, I didn't even see this entitled Karen actually shopping in the first place, because clearly she thought I was a thief despite the fact that I definitely wasn't. Wow, talk about a busybody. This lady literally followed you around the store, all under this weird assumption that you were trying to, like, I don't know, rob the place or something like that. And I really find people who act this way to be so obnoxious and so unbearable to be around. Instead of just minding her own business, she's like literally going out of her way to try and get other people in trouble for stuff they didn't even do. But you know what? I love the way the original poster handled this, because they showed how stupid this lady truly was.
If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories.
Am I the jerk for not disclosing the fact that I'm adopted to my fiance's family? Because right now they feel very betrayed, and at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 27-year-old male and I was adopted as an infant, and this is a fact that I always knew. My parents never hid this from me or made it something shameful, but I also never like to talk about it with others. It normally opens up a lot of questions about my biological parents, or my real parents as someone would call them, or some people start talking about my parents like they're not really my parents. I had it happen when I was a lot younger and started school and told people my special story. So after we moved when I was 8 years old, I stopped talking about it and acted towards others like my parents are my biological parents. Now, I told my fiance when we first started dating, but apart from her and some very close friends, I never talk about it with anybody. To me, it's not something that anyone else needs to know about, and this includes my fiance's family. Well, as luck would have it, my adopted status was revealed to my fiance's family during a recent visit of theirs. I then got a knock on the door from a private investigator who informed me that my biological parents were interested in contact with me, and they overheard the conversation. They then had a lot of questions, but primarily they were angry at me for two reasons. For starters, and most importantly for this post, because I just didn't tell them. They didn't like being kept in the dark and didn't like my fiance's response that it wasn't any of their business. Secondly, they were also mad because I expressed to the PI that I was not interested in any contact with them and asked him to pass this on to my biological parents. My fiance's family had the very reaction I try to avoid from people, and they asked how I could turn down the chance to know my real family. But the primary criticism is that I did not tell them, and that I let them find out in the way that they did. They said they could have had grandkids affected by this, and I just wouldn't tell them. My fiance reminded them that it was none of their business, and she had them leave early when they refused to let the topic go. But her parents are still pissed off at me, and it's making me question if I'm seriously the one at fault. What should I do? Okay, this is seriously insane because your fiance's family is so intrusive. First of all, that PI should not have knocked on your door to give you that information. Like, an email really would have been enough for this, so the timing for everything is just awful and just completely unfair. But also, your fiance's family is completely out of line. There is no reason in the world they should ever know this information. This is quite literally none of their business, and for them to selfishly assume that this somehow affects them is just insane. And by the way, this would not affect any future grandkids. Like, this is not even a problem to begin with. Like, what is wrong with these people? So no, you are definitely not the jerk, because the way your extended family was acting is completely out of line. Am I the jerk for refusing to go to my sister's wedding after she disrespected my late wife and also demanded a family heirloom that was given to my late wife? Because right now I really do feel disrespected, and at this point I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 32-year-old female, and I lost my wife 2 years ago in a drunk driving accident. Losing her shattered my world, and I've been trying to pick up the pieces ever since. My family, though, has never really understood what I've been going through, and to be completely honest, they never fully accepted my marriage in the first place. And for the sake of the story, we'll call my late wife Lauren. When we got married, my grandma gave me a necklace that's been passed down in our family for generations. It's a tradition that the women in the family get it when they get married, and it meant the world to me because it felt like one of the few times that my marriage to Lauren was actually recognized as real. Since Lauren passed, my sister Emma, who's always been the golden child, has been eyeing the necklace. She's getting married soon, and she recently recently mentioned that now that I'm not really married anymore, I should pass it on to her. Now that was hard to hear, but what really broke me happened last week at a family dinner. We were talking about her wedding, and she made a joke about setting me up with one of her fiance's friends. I felt uncomfortable, but I tried to brush it off. She then says to me, well, at least Lauren won't be there to haunt you if you hook up with someone. And I seriously couldn't believe that she said that. I didn't even know how to react. I just sat there. Later, when I told her how hurtful it was, she rolled her eyes at me and told me that I was being too sensitive and that I needed to stop being so depressing and lighten up. Then she brought up one of her bridesmaids who had a crush on me even when Lauren was alive and suggested that I have some fun with her at the wedding, if you know what I mean, as if my wife hadn't mattered at all. I told her there was no way I could come to the wedding if that's how she feels about Lauren and my grief. Things escalated from there, and she then accused me of being dramatic and said I was ruining her big day over one little joke. Well, my parents took her side, saying that I should just let it go and show up to support my sister. They even mentioned again how I should give Emma the family necklace, saying that since I'm not using it anymore, it should go to her now. Ever since then, I've been bombarded with calls from literally everybody. They've all told me that I'm being selfish and that I need to move on and stop holding on to the past. My sister's fiance even said that I should be grateful my family didn't disown me when I came out, as if I owe them something for barely tolerating me. Now I'm questioning everything. Am I being unreasonable for not wanting to go to her wedding after all this? Part of me wonders if I should just suck it up and go, but another part of me can't believe how little my family seems to care about Lauren or me for that matter. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, you're not the jerk at all. Your family is so disrespectful to your wife's memory, it's not even funny. Are they really trying to say, oh yeah, you just need to let it go. You need to move on and stop holding on to the past. By the way, give me that family heirloom back. You're not gonna need it. Like, what is happening right now? This doesn't sound like family. This sounds like a bunch of bullies trying to push you around. They not only basically spit on the memory of your wife, but they also try to make it sound like you're the one with a problem, when in reality, your sister has just been so disrespectful. So in my opinion, I don't blame you for not wanting to go to the wedding or even wanting to give back that family heirloom. Because if this is how you're going to be treated, then I don't blame you in the slightest for not wanting to be involved. Am I the jerk for not doing a favor for my dad simply because of the way he's treating me and my siblings? Here's what happened. Okay, so after our mom passed away, my dad told me and my 3 other siblings that he was glad that part of his life was over and he was going to find someone he actually loved and wanted to be with, and we better be ready because he wasn't slowing down for us. And this was 10 years ago. He met a few women before his wife of 9 years. They were together a few months before they got married, and she was pregnant right away. My dad said he knew that she was the one, and he was finally in love, and also that mom was his biggest regret in life. Well, this would make my sister cry, which would annoy my dad, and he would say that we should want him to be happy when he sacrificed his own happiness for us. Now, here's the thing. He's a better dad to the kids he has with his wife. He's there on their birthdays, remembers to buy them gifts, takes them out for ice cream, or for some kind of special time with him. He comes home early to spend time with them before they go to bed and helps them with their homework. And he never did that with us, even after he started changing. My siblings really wanted him for the longest time, but I always knew he was an awful parent and that he wasn't going to change towards us. We also always fought, and he told me the 3 of us were born selfish, that we wanted him to be unhappy for our sakes. I told him he basically dumped his issues onto 3 grieving kids and didn't care in the slightest what that did to us. I reminded him that my brother was only 4 years old when he lost mom, and my dad's response was to say that if I cared so much about them, then I should care even more about my younger half-siblings. But I told him that I didn't, and I have told him that a few times ever since my first half-sibling was born. In truth, I never spend any time with my half-siblings or engage with them. It's just me, my brother, and my sister, and I put my time and love into them. My siblings have reached out to dad and asked for him to love them and spend time with them, but his focus is on the family that he wants, which is his favorite family as I think of them, and I definitely don't think of them as mine. Dad's wife and one of his favorite kids had birthdays a day apart. His gift for one was delayed or late or whatever, and he wasn't going to pick both of them up on time. So he asked me to do him a favor and pick one gift up while he picked up the other, and I just said no. But he told me that I could do a favor for him since he's my dad and all this other stuff. But again, I said no. The day came and went and I didn't get it, and he freaked out and told me that I was going to ruin the birthday. He told me again that I could have done a favor for him as we're all family, but I told him I don't owe him or his wife or his favorite kids any favors. I reminded him that he owed his kids being a good dad, and he wasn't to 3 of us, so I'm not going to save his butt or do something that makes his favorite family happy because, innocent or not, they are not my problem. Well, he said that I'm such a child, and then he got my uncle to say how disappointed disappointed he was that I acted so petty. So with all things considered, am I the jerk for not doing a favor for my dad? Because right now, I'm still very angry. No, I don't think you're the jerk in this situation, because it sounds like your dad has basically walked out on his original family. Him saying that his wife was like the biggest mistake he's ever made in his life is not only incredibly gross, but also a horrible thing to say, especially in front of your kids. Like, what is wrong with him? And then for him to basically get like a do-over family and be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do things right this time, where he actually like shows up for these kids and like shows them love and attention that you should have gotten. Like, that is awful and so inappropriate. And I know if I was in your shoes, I wouldn't want to do any favors for my dad. He basically said he doesn't love me as much as his new family. And that is so insulting. Like, that's an awful thing to say. That would make me feel like garbage. Like, what is going on? So honestly, I think you would agree in saying that your dad is an absolute jerk for the way he's acting, because you and your siblings do not deserve this in the slightest. Am I the jerk for refusing to let my best friend's fiance propose at my wedding? Because right now, after I said no, they're acting like I ruined their special day, despite the fact that it was my wedding and I didn't want them doing that. Here's what happened. Okay, so I got married last month to the love of my life, and everything went off without a hitch except for one awkward moment. A week before the wedding, my best friend, who we will call Mary, asked if her fiance, who we will call Josh, could propose to her at my reception. Apparently, Josh thought it would be romantic and was convinced that it would make their moment more special. Now, I love Mary, but the idea of having my wedding overshadowed by their proposal just didn't sit right with me. I politely said no and suggested that they have their own special day. Mary seemed a little disappointed, but she said that she understood. Well, on the day of the wedding, I noticed that Mary and Josh were acting very distant, and it was clear that something was off. I later found out that Josh was upset with me for ruining his plan and felt like I'd been selfish for not allowing them to share in the love for the day. So seriously, am I the jerk for refusing to let them have their proposal at my wedding? Or was I being selfish by not letting them make it a double celebration? Because right now, I really don't know what to do. No, you are definitely not the jerk. Never in a million years is it okay to propose at someone else's wedding. That is not only rude and inconsiderate, but it's also completely taking away from the real reason we're all there. And that would be to like celebrate the marriage that's happening right now. Like, that is such a selfish thing to do, and it's so unbelievably toxic for them to be like, wow, you ruined our plan. And it's like, man, I'm really glad they asked ahead of time, because clearly they were gonna like do it no matter what. So no, you're definitely not the jerk, and I think it's awful that they even wanted to plan that in the first place. Am I the jerk for telling my sister that if she wants to give people second chances, then she should put her own neck on the line for once to see the consequences? Because right now, after being burned so many times by my sister's friends, I'm honestly sick of it, and at this point, I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, my sister, who we will call Zoe, is nice to a fault. She gives others second chances, but she is too trusting with people that she gives second chances to, and it winds up having consequences for whichever family member Zoe convinces to stick their neck out for. For example, my grandparents were talking about needing a cleaner, and Zoe asked them to hire a friend who we will call Ash. After several months, my grandparents learned that Ash had been pocketing my grandma's jewelry, and Zoe had recommended Ash's cleaning services for our grandparents' friends as well, and now we suspect that she's stolen from them too. Zoe made an excuse that Ash was a good person, but that she had a bad home life and only took the jewelry because she's trying to get away from her parents. Well, my grandparents were not amused and said that Ash was lucky because that was the only reason they didn't report her. Later, Zoe recommended a friend by the name of Lily as a babysitter for our brother's son, who we will call Max. Now, according to Max, Lily was on her phone the entire time, and Max was on his own for dinner. Max claims that Lily was actually mean to him, and my nephew isn't the type to make something up like that. Well, Zoe made another excuse that Lily's boyfriend broke up with her, and she is a good person, but she's just having a hard time. And obviously, my brother was still very pissed off at Zoe for even recommending this friend. Zoe kept trying to push me to talk to him and agree that she was right, but eventually I got fed up. I told Zoe that I get how she likes to give people second chances, but no one she recommends is ever trustworthy, and she should try putting her own neck on the line so she'll get why we're so annoyed with taking the consequences of her kindness and then her coming and trying to make us agree that she did a good thing. After that, our parents reached out to me. They said they understood me and my brother being frustrated and that they would talk to Zoe about being naive, but she was trying to do a good deed, and I should apologize to her because no matter the circumstance, it is a crummy thing to put down a person who had the best intentions. Now, one could argue that this is none of our parents' business, as we are all adults now, but our parents typically stay out of our business, and this is one of the only times our parents have gotten involved in any of our disagreements. So now, I'm torn between if I should apologize or if I should hold my ground. What should I do? No, I don't think you're at fault here. here, and in my opinion, I don't think there's anything wrong with you standing your ground. Your sister has bad judgment. Like, there's no other way to look at this, and it's honestly really insulting. Especially when she's like pushing you to talk to your brother and be like, can you convince him that I'm right? Because clearly she's not. She had one friend steal from your grandparents, and another friend mistreat the kid they were supposed to watch. Like, Zoe is literally batting zero at this point, and I don't blame you for getting upset. So no, I don't think you would be the jerk for standing your ground, because this seriously has got to stop. Am I the jerk for refusing to babysit my sister's kids after she said that my career isn't real work? Because right now I'm very upset and I don't know what to do. I'm a 26-year-old male, and I work from home as a freelance graphic designer. It's a very flexible job, and I can manage my own hours, but that doesn't mean that I'm not busy or hard at work. My 35-year-old sister has 3 kids, all under the age of 7, and is constantly asking me to babysit. At first, I didn't mind helping out occasionally, but lately it feels like she's taking advantage of me just because I'm at home. A few weeks ago, we were at a family dinner, and my sister made a comment about how I don't have a real job, and that I'm basically just playing around on my computer all day. I was pretty offended, but I didn't want to make a scene, so I just laughed it off. And then the next week, she asked me to watch her kids again because she had something coming up, but I told her that I couldn't do that because I had some deadlines that I needed to meet. Well, she just got upset and said to me, "You're home all day. What could be so important? It's not like you're doing real work." And that was honestly the last straw for me. I told her that if she didn't think my job was real, then she could find someone else to babysit and I wouldn't be helping her anymore. Well, now she's furious and says that I'm punishing her and the kids over a harmless comment. My mom has been telling me to just let it go because according to her, family helps each other out, but I'm honestly still pissed off. So am I the jerk for refusing to babysit after my sister's disrespectful comments? Because right now I really don't know what to do. No, you are not the jerk and your sister is 100% at fault. For starters, being a freelance graphic designer and doing that as your main employment is not easy. That is insanely hard and it takes a lot of hustling to get that going. So for your sister to be like, "Oh, you're not actually working, what could be so important in your life?" Like, that is so uncalled for and so disgusting. Not to mention the fact that she then turned around and was like, "Oh, by the way, watch my kids." And it's like, no, what are you doing? You can't just make those kind of comments towards somebody and then expect them to bend over backwards to make sure your life is more comfortable. She's literally sitting there and being like, "Oh, you don't have a real job. You're not doing something that's productive. You're just on the computer playing around." And it's like, wait a second, what is a real job? If I'm making money and I'm providing for myself, then guess what? That's a real job. The guy has a flexible job with flexible hours, and he can literally decide when he does and doesn't want to work. And I don't know about you, but that sounds like a dream. Why would someone not want to have that? And I guarantee you that the original poster probably works harder than their sister or anybody else in the family because he doesn't have a guaranteed paycheck at the end of the day. He has to hustle every single day just to make ends meet. So no, I don't think you're the jerk at all. And I think anything your mom has to say about family helping each other out, in my opinion, is just such a dumb point. Because if your sister really was your family, then she wouldn't be making these harmful comments in the first place. My entitled neighbors blame my parents for the scratch that they made on their own car, claiming that if we didn't ask them to move it out of our driveway, they wouldn't have scratched it in the first place. Here's what happened. So at my parents' previous house, they shared a driveway with the neighbors. The driveway was very narrow, and a car could barely drive between the houses. And then the driveway became wider into 2 garages for both houses. For 25 years, previous neighbors had no issues, especially as they mostly used their garages for storage rather than cars. But when new neighbors moved in, that's when trouble began. The neighbor's wife would always park in the driveway, making it hard to walk or get bikes through, and my parents, trying to be nice, just ignored it. Then their son got a car, and they started parking 2 cars in the driveway, taking up the entire space of the driveway. Finally, after a year or so, my parents cleared out their garage and told the neighbors they couldn't block the driveway anymore. The neighbors agreed but continued parking there, insisting my parents just knock to ask them to move. Well, this led to my parents having to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, sometimes on the weekends, or even wait 10 to 20 minutes for them to move the cars, as they were either out walking the dog or they just didn't hear us. And this was really frustrating for both parties. After months of this, the neighbors cleared their own garage, but while trying to park, the wife scratched the entire side of her car. She then screamed at my mom and blamed my parents as they had forced her to park in the garage and demanded that they pay for the damage. Well, my mom, being fed up, yelled back, saying it was a shared driveway and they never had any issues with previous neighbors. And then she just shut the door in her face. And the best part about it is that they never brought it up again. So maybe they realized how ridiculous it was, but they never said hi or spoke to my parents for the entire year before my parents moved out. But at least they finally stopped parking in the driveway because their attitude about the entire scenario was just completely out of control. Yeah, these people were being super entitled entitled. Like, how selfish do you have to be to act like that? They really took up the entire driveway and then was like, oh, if you want me to move our car, then just ask us. But it's like, no, buddy, get your car out of my side of the driveway. I should not have to ask you to move your car. Like, what is going on right now? Like, if someone did that to me, I would be half tempted just to tow their car, because that's such a selfish thing to do. Not to mention the fact that they tried to be like, oh yeah, you scratched my car, this is your fault. And it's like, are you kidding me? We haven't even parked our car in the driveway. You literally scratched your car on your own. So truly, I'm glad your parents got to move away from them, because their attitude was completely unacceptable.
If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories.
An entitled jerk walks into me on my wheelchair claiming that I was going too fast and that I need to slow down and watch where I'm going. And despite the fact that my wheelchair was literally parked and this guy walked into me because he was staring at his phone too much, I snapped at this guy in a way that I don't think he'll ever forget. Here's what happened. Okay, let me start off by saying that I am a wheelchair user. An accident in 2016 left me with a progressive disability, and last year I graduated to a tricked out power chair as a consolation prize. Now, my chair is extremely noticeable if you are paying attention. Not only is it larger than life, but I have a 4-foot flexible pole on the back of it with a multicolored pinwheel on top, a pink fairy, a rainbow pride flag, and a bright yellow tag to let people know that I'm visually impaired. And there are literally rainbow butterfly wings on the back of my seat, so I am impossible to miss. So there I am at my local grocery store, bopping along and just doing my own thing. I mean, independence feels great. I finished my shop and I meandered outside, and just as I got outside, a group was going in, so I stopped to let them pass. And one would think this is all good, right? Well, not so much. I should mention I was also very much brightly colored, wearing pink short pants and a bright yellow t-shirt, with rainbow striped Pride sneakers on my feet, and a rainbow tie-dye bucket hat. So you probably get the point. I'm hard to miss, right? But oh my friend, I assumed way too much. There I am, quietly waiting for the group to go into the store, and along comes some jerk staring at his phone. There were people in front of me, on my left and behind me, you know, because it was a busy shopping day. I had nowhere to move to without running over a very unhappy pedestrian. I watched this guy booking it into the store, his face intently staring at a screen, and then bam, he runs right into my legs and the side of my chair. Now, these power chairs are heavy. Mine is a new model with lithium batteries, and it still weighs 250 pounds without me in it. And the dude slammed so hard, he moved me sideways with my brakes locked. This idiot glanced up from his screen long enough to glare at me and say, slow down. And as we're Canadian, he didn't even give me an excuse me or sorry. So at that point, I was pissed. I said to him, excuse you, jerk. I was stopped. You plowed right into me. I then fixed on him with a patented Canadian glare of disapproval. Well, the guy gave me another glare, looked around, and then mumbled. And then he eventually huffed off. And I will say, I'm normally a pretty chill guy, but when entitled jerks walk along with the manners of a toddler and do something like that, it really pisses me off. Yeah, that is insane that that guy would be like, wow, you need to slow down, when he couldn't have been more obviously staring at his phone instead of looking forward. And this is 100% his fault, by the way. The original poster was parked in their scooter. They couldn't go anywhere and they weren't even moving. So for this guy to be like, wow, slow down, that's clearly him projecting, because he's the one that needs to slow down and look up from his stupid phone once in a while, because the way he reacted was completely unacceptable. I found out that my girlfriend cheated on me a year ago, but my legal status in the United States depends on us staying together, and I'm now at such a crossroads that I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I met my girlfriend over a year ago while I was on a J1 visa in the United States. I met her only 9 days after arriving, so we basically spent my entire 3 months there together. We fell in love pretty fast and had an amazing time. We knew I had to go home at the end of the 3 months, but we had many deep conversations about us and what we wanted, and decided we would give being in a long-distance relationship a shot. I left the States, and about 4 weeks later, she came to visit me in my home country. It was like a movie, showing her the small town I grew up in and all the places I went to as a kid. We even did a little trip to some close-by countries. We both had a very convenient work situation where we could both be remote, so every 6 weeks, one of us would go visit the other one for a month. On the days we were apart, we would FaceTime every single day, and we never missed a day, and talking to her was so easy. It got to a stage where we realized that going back and forth isn't sustainable, so we looked into moving to the same country together. She happens to be a European citizen through her dad, so it made sense for her to at least try to move to my country for a bit and try to work remotely. We had a great time, but realized pretty quickly that the lifestyle in my country wasn't really suited to us, including the life that we want, plus the job market is complete trash. So we decided that because everything about the relationship was perfect, we would get legally married so that I could live with her in the States. It made more sense, even for things outside of started the relationship. Like, for example, I have a STEM degree that would pay extremely well in the city that she's from, and it's hard for me to get STEM jobs in my hometown. She also has a very close relationship with her family, and while I'm on good terms with mine, it's definitely not as close as hers. Anyways, I'm extremely excited for this new life in the United States. I have a lot of friends in her city from living there, and I have potential to make a serious amount of money. I came to the United States, we got legally married, and while I'm waiting for my green card, I was able to get my EAD work permit, which allowed me to secure my dream job in this dream city, which is paying me about 3 times more than any job I've ever had in my life. And I started this job yesterday. Anyways, around the time of the anniversary of us deciding to be exclusive, she started acting weird when I was talking about saying that it was a happy day and we should mark the occasion. She didn't respond to my text messages about it and avoided conversations when I talked about it in person. She put it down to being so stressed out at work, and to be fair, she has a very stressful job, so I believed her, but I still had a weird feeling in my gut. So I said it again a few weeks later, saying that we should do something to mark the occasion now that work is less stressful, even if it's late now. But when I said that, she got weird about it again. So then I decided to have a snoop, which I'm not proud of and I know is frowned upon by many, but we have talked about it and gave each other a license to snoop around. And for the record, she snoops in my phone all the time. I don't really care, I've got nothing to hide. But for me, I've never snooped through her phone until now. Anyways, all I did was search the name of guys that she was seeing before me in her text messages, and I saw all that I needed to know. The next morning, I was in a terrible mood, and she could see this, so after her persistently asking why, I say that I saw something on her phone, and I need her to explain it to me honestly. Long story short, she had hooked up with this guy about a week after we had become exclusive. They went on a dinner date, went to a nightclub afterwards, and then went back to her apartment and spent some quality time together, if you know what I mean. And she just confessed all of this to me today. So now I'm heartbroken and I don't know what to do. We've had such a dream relationship and everything is great other than this. I also can't stay in this dream job in this really cool city if we break up. The situation in my home country is kind of bleak, and I'm so conflicted for these reasons. She also said that if I decide to leave her, she completely understands, but also doesn't want to wait around pretending to be with me until I get my green card. I know we were in our early days, and I understand long distance is very tough, but I think I've got the right to be upset if she spent some quality time with someone after we agreed to be exclusive. So right now I feel completely broken and I seriously don't know what to do. Okay, honestly, this is a devastating situation. Can you imagine going to another country for someone you thought you were in love with, only to then find out that yes, they have been cheating on you behind your back? And it doesn't matter if it happened early in the relationship or late in the relationship. Cheating is cheating and that is not okay. But to make it even worse, you finally have your dream job, you're working on getting your green card and everything's going well, and then this gets dropped on you like a ton of bricks. Like, that has got to be so awful. Like, I can't imagine being in that kind of situation because this really would like completely change my life. Like, this really is completely unfair because you literally went to another country to start work, all for this lady that you thought you loved and like you wanted to be with. So hopefully there's some kind of like, I don't know, immigration lawyer that can help you through this process, who might have a good idea of like, okay, these are your options, this is what you can do. Because the way you got treated by this lady is absolutely unacceptable, and you do not deserve to have your life uprooted in this kind of way. An entitled old jerk tries to get up in my business by asking me why I was taking so much medication, causing me to snap at him in the pharmacy line in a way that this guy truly will never forget. Here's what happened. So I have a chronic health condition that is treatable, but it requires daily medication. I'm also a very tall and fit water polo player and aquatic marathoner, so I'm not someone who looks sick in any kind of way, which is why I think this whole situation happened in the first place. In my country, I'm able to get my medications for free for several months of supply at a time, so when I do go to the pharmacy, I usually have to fill my backpack up with several bottles of medication. Today I went and it was busy with a long line of all types of people. As I'm putting medication into my backpack, this weird old man at the window next to me starts to tap me on my shoulder and says, "What's all that medication for?" Now, I will admit, I was pretty shocked by this and just looked at him incredulously. I said to him, "I'm certainly not going to tell you." Well, he immediately responded sorry with a horrified look on his face. The pharmacist then very sternly told him that he can't ask other people those types of questions, and then she turned to me and apologized to me. I told her thank you, and then I walked out while everyone else in line was just kind of staring at me and this entitled old jerk. Now, I suppose he meant no harm by it, but like, why on earth would you ever think it's okay to ask a complete stranger about their medication or even their health conditions? I feel bad for snapping at him, but I was just so taken aback by his nosiness, and I was embarrassed when I realized everyone was staring. I just don't know why some people are like this, because this was absolutely unacceptable. Yeah, talk about bad manners. Why on earth would anybody in their right mind be like, "Hey, why do you have all that medication?" It's like, dude, that is none of your business. Like, seriously, stay out of it. Like, the pharmacy pharmacist was right. You can't just ask people that question. Not just because you need to mind your own business, but it could also be like a really sensitive situation. So yeah, I don't blame you for snapping at that guy, because if I was in your shoes, I probably would have done the exact same thing. My former boss said that he wouldn't be able to pay me in 90 days simply because his business was falling apart. So I decided to find a new job immediately, forcing him to find a replacement despite him begging me to please stick around. Here's what happened. So my former boss didn't realize that to actually make money, he had to show up for work. Instead, he came and went as he pleased and expected me to pick up the slack and essentially try to play the role of receptionist, paralegal, office manager, and attorney. And for the record, I never gave legal advice. He just expected me to, and so did his clients. His friend was my divorce attorney and worked in the same building, so he would pop in to just chat and see how things were going. But even he started noticing that my boss was absent more than not and questioned how things were going. I started confiding in him that I was really concerned because I could see my former boss shelling out more than he was making, and his clients were less than pleased at never being able to speak with their attorney. Then my former boss started doing some unethical and shady things to move cases along, and I started getting really nervous about what would happen if the former boss got caught and what that would mean for me. I told my attorney and former boss's friend all of this, and he said that his own firm needed extra support staff, but he didn't want it to appear like he was poaching me from his friend on purpose, and that I had to talk with the former boss about the state of the office and see if there was a way to salvage things. Well, I never really got that chance because later that day, my former boss stormed into the office and told me that I needed to start looking for a new job and to just take the first offer I get because he was probably going to have to shut the doors in the next 90 days and he couldn't guarantee me a paycheck. I spoke with my attorney the next day about it, and he shrugged and said for me to just give my 2 weeks notice and call it a day. Later that same day, my former boss came into the office and told me to hold off on finding a new job and to give him a month to try and turn things around. But I'm just thinking to myself, sorry, but I've got bills to pay, so I'm not going to sit idly and wonder if I'm going to be seeing another paycheck or not. I drafted my 2 weeks notice only because my attorney wanted this from me as a professional courtesy to his friend, and then I gave it to my former boss at the end of the pay period. Well, this is when my former boss gave me a weird look. He said to me, "You're leaving, but why?" So I responded by saying, well, per our conversation, you advised me to find other employment, so I did. He asked me where I was going, and then I said the friend's law firm. He said to me, "Seriously? When I make this business work, I'm gonna want you back. Is that gonna be a problem?" I responded by saying, well, good luck with that. He then asked me what he's paying me, and I said to him, less than you in half the hours, but at least I know his checks won't bounce. I heard from my replacement on his first solo day as I trained him during my last week that my former boss regretted telling me on a whim to leave because I was the only one who knew anything about his cases, which, you know what? It sucks to suck. He should not have left me to run his firm without any help, knowing that I'm not an attorney or a licensed paralegal, just so he could go on lavish vacations and ignore all of his clients. Even if my former boss wanted me to come back, I've already been bumped to full-time hours and gotten a raise in less than a month, and there's a promise of a second raise very soon to put me at what I was making at my former boss's place, but here I get paid holidays, PTO, and some sick leave. So basically, there's no way on God's green earth I would ever go back to my former boss even if he begged me. Yeah, talk about a bad business decision. The second someone's like, oh yeah, I can't pay you, it's time to find another job, and then they try to double back and be like, psych, just kidding, don't get a new job. Like, I would have already had a new job lined up right then and there. No one's gonna mess with my paycheck, and no one is gonna make it so I can't make ends meet. Especially if I'm the one putting in all the hard work, like that would make me go insane. There's no way that's gonna happen. So if I was in the original poster's shoes, I absolutely would have done the same thing. I would have gone to this guy's competition and been like, okay, it's less pay and it's less hours, but you know what? It's better than not getting paid. Because what this boss did was completely inappropriate, and I do not blame you for moving on in the slightest. My husband and I were planning on getting divorced, but my husband ended up cheating on me before we could make that happen. And after my sister-in-law put my husband on blast and basically made all of this public, I'm now struggling with the results of this situation, and at this point, I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my husband and I have been together for 17 years and married for 10. We have 2 daughters, ages 14 and 16, and I got pregnant very early in the relationship, but me and my husband decided to make it work. We were happy for a while, obviously had another daughter, and eventually decided to make it official, and we were very happy for a time. We've been drifting apart for years. We've never been a couple prone to arguing or fighting. We are both avoiders, but a year or so ago, I realized we were avoiding each other more and more. We've both had mental health struggles, and just managing our daily responsibilities took so much out of us that we didn't have anything left for each other. When we did talk, it was mostly about logistics and the kids. We finally had the divorce talk about 10 months ago, and we both agreed it was probably the right thing to do, but neither of us was enthusiastic to uproot our whole lives, deal with the financial side of things, or face breaking it to the kids. kids. We talked about whether maybe we can still make it work and fall back in love, whether we should consider marital counseling or something. Things were left very open-ended. Then, a week later, my father passed away. We both embraced that as an excuse and agreed to revisit the issue later, but never did. Now, the last year has been rough. I've been mourning my dad and always had the future of our marriage in the back of my mind, but we've pretty much kept operating as if that conversation never happened. At this point, I'm still wondering if we can work things out, and I'm asking my friend for contact information for any kind of marital counselors they might have. Well, to make a long story short, my sister-in-law spots him out and about with another woman and she loses her mind. She puts him on blast to her whole family, and it finally gets back to the kids. Now, I'm obviously not thrilled about it, but I'm also not going to act like it's the end of the world when our relationship had deteriorated to essentially us being roommates with shared children who hook up occasionally. He apologized and we agreed that clearly it's time to separate and that he's going to find some kind of apartment or something like that. And I'm having my own emotions about all of this, and it's honestly been rough. Well, as a result of all of this, the kids won't even speak to him. They're saying that once he moves out, they never want to see him again. And this is devastating for him and upsetting to me because he's a great dad and a good influence on them. The explanation that I've gone with for both his family and the kids is that the relationship has been essentially over and we've been holding off on divorce while I'm dealing with my dad's estate. But there was no big betrayal here. Most of his family accepted that, along with a reminder that we have kids to worry about, and the only concern in all of this is keeping it friendly and drama-free for their sake. But his sister and my kids have not. My older daughter keeps asking me if we agreed that it was okay to see other people, and I'm not willing to straight up lie to her, so I've just been going with, well, I'm not going to get into the details of everything, and repeating what I said previously. But she keeps parroting her aunt that if we didn't agree to see other people, then it is cheating. And at this point, I don't really know what to do here. I'm not going to lie and say I don't have some level of frustration towards my husband for jumping into another woman's bed without thinking about what it could do to the kids, or having the courtesy to let me know that things are definitely over. I'm worried about my kids picking up on that emotion from me when I'm trying to present a united front with my soon-to-be ex. I'm frustrated that I don't get to process all of this privately because my sister-in-law is a gossip and she likes to stir the pot. I can tell my girls feel incredibly hurt and betrayed, and I can't help but blame myself as well because clearly we should have put this marriage to rest a long time ago and saved us all this grief. How do I fix this moving forward? What should I do? Okay, honestly, I don't think there's anything you can do to fix this. Yes, it does sound like you two probably should have separated a while back, but there was way too much going on and your dad passed away, and that in and of itself can be crazy, and I completely understand that. But the person who crossed a line, seriously, was your husband. And yes, the circumstance sucks, and your sister-in-law is a gossip and she's putting all this out in the public, but at the end of the day, she is right. Your husband cheated on you, he straight up did that. No matter how you try to frame it, that is exactly what happened. And I'm honestly right there with you when you're like, okay, I want to process this privately. I don't want everybody knowing my business, and I don't want this out in the open like this. So truly, I'm so sorry you're dealing with all of this, and I'm so sorry that this is the route your husband decided to take. Because regardless of how your relationship really was going, this truly ended up being completely unfair for both you and your daughters. My entitled neighbors have parties on the weeknights until 3 o'clock in the morning, and after dealing with this all summer, as well as making several complaints to my HOA, I now feel like our life is falling apart because right now I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I live in a master planned HOA community, and we have a noise ordinance set in place stating that outside noise is supposed to stop at 10 o'clock p.m. And everyone else on my street respects this for the most part. The people behind me sometimes go a little late, but they are about 27 years old with 2 toddlers who are otherwise extremely respectful, so maybe going 30 to 45 minutes over doesn't really bother me or anybody else. But the family in question though has massive parties. We're talking just their guest cars take up both sides of the entire street, plus both sides of the side street between my half of the street and theirs. Anytime you go outside, there's no less than 5 to 10 people on the front patio, and sometimes another 10 to 15 people in the backyard, and at least another 10 inside of the house. And you can hear them inside because they leave the front door open. Every weekend during the summer, there's always about 40-something people at their house. The older teens will hang out around the cars, and they are loud, they're rude, and they're disrespectful. Plus, they throw their trash everywhere. One example of them being disrespectful and rude was when I was walking home with my mini pig. And yes, just for clarity, I am talking about the farm animal. She was leashed and following behind me, eating her snacks that I dropped for her, and I dropped some popcorn behind me to encourage her to follow along. Now, I understand different cultures have different beliefs around animals and all this other stuff, but these teenagers threw bottles at her when they saw her, screaming out that she startled them. Also, I should add that the HOA knows about my pig. She's registered with my city, and my property is in ordinance with the city guidelines parents for having a pet pig. Well, when they did that, I scolded them firmly, but never raising my voice at them, stating that what they just did was a very cruel thing to do. Well, one of the adults heard me and came running over, further startling my already scared pig, and proceeds to berate me for screaming at frightened children. During the summer, we only have to deal with their crazy parties during the weekend. However, the second football season starts, every night that there's a football game on, there is a party. It's driving me absolutely insane. I work from home, so for me personally, they aren't messing up any kind of sleep schedule or anything like that. But my 12-year-old obviously has a sleep schedule. He has to get up at 6:30 in the morning for school. When the neighbors are partying until 3 o'clock in the morning, 3 houses down, and it sounds like they're in my backyard, it severely affects him. I've sent in video proof of the noise with timestamps to the HOA, and I know several of my neighbors have as well. I've even contacted the security people that we have, and I've personally sent no less than 30 complaints, and nothing has changed. Last Sunday, things escalated even further, and I was once again walking my pig. Now, we do live in a desert, so it's way too hot to walk her during the day because she will literally split a hoof and then not be able to walk for days because of the pain. Well, the adults started yelling and hollering, making all kinds of unnerving animalistic types of squeals, which really freaked my pig out. So I had to risk her feet just to walk around the long way to our house so that we could avoid their house. I get that we both own our homes, and sometimes this is part of home ownership, but this feels so excessive and completely unnecessary. And right now, I don't know what to do anymore. I also didn't take her for a walk last night because of Monday Night Football. She was so sad she didn't get to go for her walk, and she just sat at the gate and was whining. I take her for a walk every single night, and we don't cause any problems. She is no different than anyone else walking their dog on a leash. And now I feel like the house full of bullies is dictating what I do with my life and my pets because of their rude behavior. The HOA has been wonderful for all other complaints, approvals, or anything else that we have needed from them. So I don't understand why this issue is being completely disregarded. What should I do? First and foremost, I want to say that I've been in this situation before, and trust me, it really sucks. Having neighbors that are rude and obnoxious and incredibly loud at all hours of the night, it is never a fun experience, and it really does suck entirely. So to that end, I completely sympathize, and I know exactly where you're coming from. But in my opinion, I think you've done all the reasonable things that you can do. You've talked to your HOA, you've complained, you've shown proof that they're being way too loud. You've done everything you can except for one very specific thing that I would definitely do if I was in your shoes. Because if I lived 3 doors down from these people and I heard them making this much noise, I would 100% call the police and complain. There is no reason that you should have to put up with this. Their antics and their behavior is completely out of control. Because you know what? What you said goes both ways. Yes, they own a house, but so do you. And you signed up for this HOA just like they did. And they are supposed to keep the noise down after 10 o'clock. That is the rules of the neighborhood, and they need to do that. So truly, if I was in your shoes, I would absolutely call the police. Because this is not something that anyone should ever have to deal with.
If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories.
An entitled jerk runs into me on a walking path, all because he was running on the wrong side. He even went as far as claiming that I was the one at fault and that I needed to stop acting like this path was reserved just for me. Here's what happened. Okay, so where I'm from, it is customary to walk, run, or cycle on the right-hand side, just like the same way traffic flows on the road. So I was having my usual lunch break walk, as I do nearly every day, and I had a guy literally run into me. My route takes me past our local sports stadium, and like most stadiums, the forecourts are long and wide, leaving plenty of space for everyone to move around. The side furthest from the stadium is separated from the tram line by a long, straight hedgerow. So I was walking the length of the stadium with this hedgerow on my right-hand side, close enough that every now and then, the longer protruding branches lightly brushed my right hand. And I was doing this while looking up at the stadium and reminiscing about the nice times I have shared there with my wife. About 2/3 of the way along, there's a crossing point over the tram lines, and I can only assume that this is where he came from, as for the duration of my walk along the side of the stadium, there had been not one single person in sight. I figured this was because there must be a service vehicle coming from behind me, and I stopped to look over my shoulder, but there was nothing. There was nobody there. Only the wide open boulevard and not a soul in sight. I turned back to face the direction I was walking and put my arms slightly out to my sides, as if to say, what is going on, with a facial expression to match it. This guy literally ran into me and said, "You think this path is reserved just for you?" And he shouted this as making shoulder-to-shoulder contact, causing me to stumble. I stood there for a second trying to comprehend what had just happened, and I shouted back at him by saying, "You literally saw me walking there the whole time. There was no need for that." And he did not even look back, but just continued his jog. A few hundred meters further, and there is a bridge that goes over the motorway where the path becomes smaller smaller, perhaps 4 to 5 meters wide, with barriers on both sides. Now, I'm still sticking to the right, and a different jogger passes on my left, but decided to not move back to the right and just stay in the middle of the path. At this point, a cyclist is approaching, keeping to the right side, and starts to swerve, literally because the jogger has positioned himself in a way that the cyclist cannot pass without hitting him. And this jogger still doesn't move 1 centimeter from his line, forcing the cyclist to stop just to avoid contact. We catch each other's eyes and just shake our heads at each other in disdain, because we seriously could not believe that people could be this selfish. Yeah, that's insane to me, because seriously, all you have to do is sit on the right-hand side if you're on the path. And the fact that that guy ran into you and was like, oh yeah, you think this path belongs to you? It's like, dude, no, of course it doesn't belong to me, but you're clearly on the wrong side. So yeah, if I was in that situation, I would be just as baffled, because that is seriously not that hard to follow. An entitled Karen gets up in my face after my medicine gets filled before hers at a pharmacy, forcing me to talk back to her in a way that I honestly never expected. Here's what happened. Okay, I want to preface this by saying that I'm not one for confrontation, but when I am pushed to that point, I will speak up, but it takes me a lot to get to that point. I went to the pharmacy in the morning just after opening, and this is something I tried to avoid due to it being the witching hour for entitled old people, but I had things to do later on, and I put it off to the point that I was out of my meds. There was one person in the waiting area, which was this old lady tapping her cane impatiently against a shopping cart. I got invited up to the window by the tech, told them my name and what I was there for, and she goes off to the med storage area to find it. Well, this entitled Karen didn't like that, I guess, because she came rushing up to the window with her cart and cane to yell. First she yelled at me, and then she yelled at the tech. She wanted to know why I was getting my meds before her, even though she was here before me. And every time she referred to me, she would hit me in the leg and the knee with her cane, and she was not doing this gently. Now, I didn't really have anywhere to escape, because this pharmacy's pickup window was really small. So I had a wall to my right, her to my left, the counter with a window in front of me, and this Karen literally parked her cart right against me. I couldn't even properly turn around to move the cart. The tech tried explaining that they were filling her script while mine has already been filled. I mean, mine had been shipped in, so they didn't even have to do anything other than put the order in and hand it to me. This Karen still wasn't happy with that answer and said that no one else should be getting their meds until she gets hers. Once again, moving to hit me in the leg. Now, at this point, I am pissed off. My leg was throbbing, the tech gave her a reasonable answer, and I just wanted to pay and get my meds. After she smacked me the 5th time with her cane, I told her in the best mom voice I have that if you hit me with that cane one more time, I will take it from your hands and put it so far up where the sun doesn't shine that you'll be tasting the rubber foot on it. She then muttered something about respect and all this other garbage, but I just told her that she needed to shut up, sit down, and wait for her meds. They are working on it. I also threw in that the world didn't stop for her problems, nor did it revolve around her. Well, as a result, she did sit down, and I'm not sure if it's because of what I said or because the tech offered to call the police for assault. I did consider it, but turned her down in the end because I didn't want to stick around any longer than I needed to. As I was packing my meds up into my bag, the pharmacist came out and told her they weren't going to fill her script now and that she needed to leave. So in the end, she didn't get her medications and was kicked out of the store. She gave me an awful glare as I was backing out of my parking spot, and to be completely honest, I thought she was going to rush out into the lot and claim that I hit her or something like that, because based on the way she acted in the pharmacy, I definitely would not put it past her. Okay, this is a fantastic story for so many reasons. For starters, I think the original poster absolutely met fire with fire. This Karen was literally smacking her in the leg and treating her so poorly for literally no reason. Like, she was up in this window screaming at everybody, all while literally assaulting the original poster. And so at that point, after getting boxed into a corner and then pushed around and hit repeatedly, like right then, that's when the gloves would be off. And the original poster handled this correctly. Like, I would not put up with that for a second because nobody should have to deal with that. But more importantly, in my opinion, is the way that the pharmacy themselves handled this. They didn't just fill the script and be like, okay, we'll get your medicine for you. They said, no, you're not getting your script filled and you need to leave. And that, in my opinion, is the only correct response in this scenario. You don't bend to this stupid Karen's whims and be like, oh yeah, we'll get your script, don't worry about it. Because that just shows that you have no spine and you will absolutely give in when someone pushes you hard enough. And it displays this awful pattern that yes, you're gonna let them get away with that. So the way the original poster and the pharmacy handled this was perfect in my opinion. Because when someone's talking to you like that and treating you like garbage, you have every right to defend yourself and not put up with that for a single minute. Would I be the jerk if I invite everyone from my husband's friend group to our wedding reception, except for one girl who we've always had problems with? Here's what happened. Okay, so I've been married to my husband for a year now, but we're finally having the reception in December of this year. My husband has a friend group since high school, and they all went to to school together. Besides us, it consists of 5 couples and 3 single people, and the one girl that I'm gonna mention is the only single girl in the group. Let's call her Tiffany for the sake of the story. Tiffany dated one of the guys for 5 years before breaking up with him after she decided to cheat on him. He quickly moved on and started dating a younger coworker. They have been dating for 2 years now, and she was very bitter over the breakup and caused a stir in the friend group even though it was all her fault. So I'm considering not inviting her due to an incident that happened last year during Christmas. That year we all got gifts for each other. We hosted the Christmas event at our house and everyone came on time except for her. Not only was she late, she also didn't greet my husband and I, but she greeted everybody else. She also got everybody's gifts except for my husband and myself, citing that she only got gifts for the real couples. Now I brushed it off the first time, but she said it again twice. She then left early and everyone, including us, were confused as to why she acted like that. Most of the friend group sided with us, but a girl and a guy were defending her, claiming her social awkwardness and inability to read social cues were the reason why she acted the way that she did. But I felt like her words and her actions were so deliberate because there's no way that she would forget to give us a gift or to even greet us. She definitely knew better. It felt rude and on purpose. Even though half the group dislikes her, the other half is still fond of her and close to her. They hang out with her regularly, and we still hang out with them too, but without the girl in attendance. Tiffany also reacted poorly to the news of my pregnancy. She asked me if it was an accident, if we truly loved each other, and all this other stuff. And it was the strangest reaction I've ever had to my pregnancy. Now, for a bit of context, I dated my husband for 2 years before our engagement and our marriage. We have a baby, and we also have known each other for nearly 10 years, and we were close friends for most of that time before we started dating. I was not part of this friend group until we started dating, even though I also went to school with them. My husband also isn't close with her and has never really been that close. In fact, they've never really gotten along. She's really sweet to the other women in the group, but just not to me. We're the only married couple with a baby in the group, and everyone else is dating seriously, with no engagements on the horizon. Now, the reason I'm making this post is because I'm reading that it's rude to exclude one person out of a whole friend group to a wedding, and I'm just wondering if I'm in the wrong for this. My husband is supportive, and we both don't want to invite her, but honestly, this whole situation really sucks, and we don't know what to do. Okay, for starters, no, you would not be the jerk for excluding this lady from your wedding. She sounds like a piece of work, and she doesn't sound like a friend in the slightest. Like she's exclusively rude to you and your husband, and has pretty obviously made that known to pretty much everybody in the group. And any people trying to be like, oh yeah, her social awkwardness is the reason she can't do things right. She can't read social cues, she can't help it. Like, I would understand that if this was a child of some kind, but Tiffany in this story is 27 years old. That is more than enough time to understand social cues and at least have some semblance of what's going on. Like, I'm sorry, that is not a good enough excuse, if even an excuse in the first place. Because that's just a really convenient reason for someone to get away with being a jerk, which is exactly what Tiffany is. So in my opinion, I don't blame you for cutting her out of your wedding entirely, because her attitude about you and your husband have been completely toxic, and in my opinion, you should not have to deal with that in the slightest. Am I the jerk for not allowing my friend to bring her emotional support animal to my house after it destroyed my furniture the last time they were here? Here's what happened. I'm a 19-year-old female, and I have a close friend who we will call Amy, who has a small dog that she refers to as her emotional support animal. Now, I'm a huge animal lover, and I have no problem with pets in general, so when she asked if she could bring her dog over a few months ago for a small gathering, I was totally fine with it. However, during that visit, her dog completely destroyed one of my couch cushions by chewing it up, and also scratched the legs of my coffee table. Amy apologized, but she kind of brushed it off and said to me, he's still learning to behave in new environments. Now, I didn't push back too much because I knew the dog is important to her, but I also was pretty upset because it cost me quite a bit to replace the damaged items. Fast forward to now, and Amy asked if she could bring her dog to my place again for another get-together. But this time, I politely told her that I wasn't comfortable with the dog coming this time because of what happened last time, and I don't want any more of my furniture being ruined. Well, when I said that, Amy got really upset and said that I was being insensitive to her mental health needs. She insisted that she needs the dog with her at all times and that I'm making her feel excluded by not allowing the dog. I suggested that she leave the dog at home for just a couple of hours or that we meet somewhere else, but she said I'm being unreasonable. And now some of our mutual friends are saying that I should let the dog come just to keep the peace, but I don't think it's fair that I should risk some more damage to my home. So am I the jerk for putting my foot down in the way that I did? What should I do? No, you're definitely not the jerk. If someone's gonna be over at your house with their dog, then they need to be able to keep that dog under control, whether it's an emotional support dog or not. Like, seriously, the fact that Amy completely dismissed the fact that her dog destroyed your property and like completely ripped up your couch and your table, like, that is so toxic and just so annoying. Like, why should you have to put up with that a second time when you could easily meet up somewhere else that wouldn't involve your property getting destroyed by her dog? It also blows my mind that Amy's trying to frame this as some kind of like mental health offense of some kind, as if you putting a boundary down for her out of control dog is somehow a shot at her mental health needs. Like, you did offer alternatives of you guys meeting up and having a get together. In fact, why not just have it at Amy's house? Like, the way Amy's acting, in my opinion, is so annoying and just super manipulative. So no, I don't think you're the jerk at all, because clearly she has very little concern for you or your property. Am I the jerk for moving in with my grandparents and telling my mom that I'm done supporting her after she practically neglected me pretty much my entire childhood? Here's what happened. I'm a 16-year-old female, and my mom had me when I was 18 years old. My dad was just some guy that she hooked up with at college, and for years it was just the two of us. She didn't want to go back to her hometown so my grandparents could help us. She didn't even tell them about me for several years, and then used a 6-year-old me to break the news to them. Then, not only did she use me to break the news, but she had me ask them if we could stay there for a while, and she even coached me to do the puppy dog eyes and make it all good. And I did all of that because she asked me to, and because I was 6. In fact, she had me lie about pretty much everything. When she wanted me to lie about my father, or when she wanted me to lie about where we'd lived before, I would do pretty much anything she would ask me to do. I followed her along eagerly for the most part when she was bouncing between guys and putting those relationships before me. I even shared a room with a random baby and a toddler when I was 8 years old because my mom's then boyfriend had only one extra room where his kids slept. I tried to speak up about wanting mom to focus more on me, and she figured out what I was going to say and gave me this guilt trip about needing to be put first, all because she had me so young and how she needed me to get on board. So I never tried again. Well, 4 years ago, she met her husband and dated him online when COVID kept everybody at home. They moved in together 3 years ago and got married 2 weeks after we moved in together. It was him, his 3 kids and mom, and then me. His kids spent some time with their mom, but they were with us a lot too. And I hated this honestly, but for my mom, I said nothing. She put more effort into his kids than she ever did to me, and it really stung a lot. They were younger, but so what? I was still her kid too. She treated me more like an older sister by burdening me with her issues and asking me for help with them. So I started spending more time with my grandparents and started to thrive. And then her husband's ex passed away, and my mom and her husband wanted to take in her other kids, which were different kids than the stepkids my mom already had, with my mom eventually telling me that they were adopting them all. Now at that point, I just sort of gave up, and I asked my grandparents if I could just live with them. There were some custody things still being worked out, so I was only living with those kids a couple of days. Well, my mom was shocked when I told her I wanted to stay with her parents, but she ended up letting me, thinking that this would be a temporary move. But she realized after more than a month that I'm serious. She has tried to get me to come and spend time with them and bond with the kids, and just to help out around the house, but I told her no. She said they'll be my official siblings in a year, and we need to give them a good life, but I still told her no again. They'll be her kids, and I won't be because she never treated me like hers. I told her that I don't want to give those kids a good life or to be their sister. I don't want to help her or her husband, and I don't want to put her first anymore. I told her that I'm done supporting her. My mom then started crying, and her husband cussed me out and accused me of cruelty and abandoning the family. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, I don't think you're the jerk at all, because I think the way your mom is acting is completely selfish. She not only neglects you for a majority of your life, but then tries to turn around and be like, oh, come on, we gotta do this for the family. And it's like, what are you talking about? What family? You've done nothing to make me feel like I have a family, and if anything, you've turned your back on me entirely. Like, that's completely awful and so unfair for you. So no, I don't blame you for moving in with your grandparents, because the way your mom's been treating you is completely unfair. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.